right, welcome to the Krug Show. Thursday night, it's March the 14th, 2024, brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out in Emeryville and Corte Madera. We're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle. We're also brought to you by Marin Auto Glass, 415-883-3030, marinautoglass.com. Underdog Fantasy. Check that link in the description. Use the promo code KRUG, and they will match you up to $100. And Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles down in Monterey. Call Anthony Catania. He's at 831-521-5264. We also, in the month of April, which is coming up in about 3 weeks, we'll be adding a brand new sponsor, and that's Mancini's Sleep World. And we're really pleased to have Mancini's with us. So thank you to all the good people at Mancini's, and we'll tell you more about that as we get closer to April, but we really appreciate them jumping in as well. Maybe one of my favorite streams of the week when the three of us get together on Thursday nights. Raphael 45629 says, like and subscribe, everybody. Yeah, if you could hit like and subscribe, that would be awesome. Sometimes we've done it on all three or on two channels at once, and we've talked about doing it different ways. Tonight, just on the Krug Show. Next week, it'll be on Jesse's channel all the way through, then Vish. And but this is one of my favorite streams because we talk and we do our own thing, but we don't plan. And so I don't know what these guys want to talk about. They don't know necessarily what I want to talk about. And we'll try to hit as much information as possible. And hopefully you guys all benefit. But guys, what a great time to be talking Niners, huh? I mean, there's just so many topics out there. And it's like almost I don't know where to start. Why don't we start with what they've done so far? Do you guys like, I mean, my friend Dieter Kurtenbach, who covers the Niners for KMBR and writes for the San Jose Mercury News, had an article out there the other day saying that, man, the Niners are getting crushed in free agency, and he doesn't like their off season, and he's really negative on it. I told him I thought he was way premature. I mean, I can't talk about an off season until the draft because the draft is the lifeblood to the sport. But the Niners have signed, and they've agreed to. I don't know if they've actually signed Malik Collins and Jordan Elliott on the interior of the D-line, Leonard Floyd and Yatir Gross Matos on the ends at defensive end. Other than that, what am I missing? Is there one more in there? There is one.
Just the guys that they brought back.
They brought back
Kevin Kendricks.
They signed Kendricks, and then Kendricks went back to the Cowboys because Mike Zimmer said, hey, man, you know, I had you your whole career. Come help me in Dallas. I was actually really happy about that, to be honest. I didn't want Kendricks. I don't want a 33-year-old guy who's at the very end, not at linebacker where it's a position where you already have Jalen Graham and you have D. Winters and you have Greenlaw and Warner. I mean, obviously Greenlaw's injured, but you have the draft. There's to me, every mock draft I do, when I get to day 3, the absolute steals of steals are all at linebacker. There's a bunch of steals there. I mean, if the draft goes like the mock drafts have gone, man, there's going to be some incredible steals at linebacker on day 3 of the draft. So I didn't want Kendricks, and I was really glad when he said, I'm going to Dallas instead. What do you think of what they've added before we get to what they've subtracted? What do you guys think? Is there anybody that stands out there to you that you're really excited about?
For me, Collins. I mean, I think that he's the one. I think he's likely going to start. You look at the money that he got paid. Obviously, they traded for him. I think that's an under-the-radar player right there. Most people probably aren't familiar with his work, but he's a very good pass rusher from the interior. And I think that he can wreak havoc a little bit. And it's interesting what the 49ers decided to do, because when I looked at it, of course, we all want to get the big fish. And so Danielle Hunter was the guy for me. But when you really break it down and you look at what Danielle Hunter signed for, and you realize that they were able to get Gross Matos, Floyd, and Elliott for that same price, and then they go and trade for Collins, they're adding a lot of depth. They're going younger for the most part and healthier for the most part. I mean, Gross Matos has some injury things, so that's why I say for the most part. And Floyd's a little bit older, but the other three are very young. And then the other thing they're doing that I like is flexibility. These guys are all on deals for the most part. So they're looking at it and saying, okay, Brock Purdy is going to get paid in 2 years. That's the idea here, or the assumption. So why not make sure that we're free and clear and agile when that time approaches? These guys all get 2-year deals. So I actually like what they're doing as far as the incoming guys. We'll talk about the departures a little bit later, but just for that portion of it, I actually do like what they're doing. Vish?
What do you think, Vish?
I like what they're doing as well. I think the like or dislike what they're doing is somewhat overrated when it comes to free agency talk. And because the issue is oftentimes what we don't mention is 6 months from now, it's the deals that you don't make that are often the ones that we're saying are smart, right? Because every deal in free agency is an overpay, and you're identifying that when you do that. So I try to look at what they're doing and see if it's practical. Jesse talked about it from the contractual standpoint, how what they're doing is practical. So I'll talk about it from just the personnel standpoint. Krug, you and I did multiple shows after the Super Bowl where we identified defensive line as a pressing issue once again for this team. And we talked about how philosophically John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan are tied to having an excellent defensive line. And in the case that they have to kind of retool this roster to once again make a Super Bowl run, they're going to once again try to get this defensive line deep and nasty because it was something that was lacking for them for basically the majority of last year. And what's interesting to me is they've gone and done that, right? Malik Collins adds interior pressure. He's an excellent interior pass rusher. I'm a fan. Well, okay, Yetur Gross-Matos is interesting to me. I think a lot of people have opinions on how good he can be as a pass rusher. I don't think what he did in Carolina necessarily projects practically for what he's going to be asked to do as a 49er. So it comes down to, can you look at Yetur Gross-Matos' traits and think that he could become an excellent edge player? I don't know that I can say that based on what he did in Carolina, but I know when he came out of the draft and what his physical ability is, Yetur Gross-Matos does have the ability to do that. Then when you look at Leonard Floyd is just an extremely productive player. Brandon Staley was his linebackers coach in Chicago. He had a career year in 2020 when he was the guy who made their defense the number one defense next to Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Donald in 2020 when Brandon Staley was his defensive coordinator. So it kind of made sense from that fit. He's highly productive. He's been highly productive. He's a veteran. He's played in a lot of big games, and he's been productive in big games. So I think all the signings are practical. I think Elliott is a little bit of a scheme fit. I think he's a little bit of a projection for him to be worth the money that he gave, but he can fulfill a role. I think they got their defensive line deep once again. I think they did an excellent job in free agency. We will talk about who exited, but what's interesting to me is I think they went more all in free agency on defensive line than I expected. When I looked at them this offseason, I thought it would be a couple bites at the apple at defensive line and free agency, try to bring back a Kevin Givens, and then once again in the draft, attack defensive line. To me, when I look at their free agents moves, and I don't know how you think about it, the strategy of the entire draft changes because I think they went all in on defensive line in the free agency period, basically to be like the rest of the draft and all of that, we're not going to overpay or overpush to get a defensive lineman. I'm not saying they won't draft one. They have 11 picks, and it's hard not to draft a defensive lineman in any draft. But I don't think they'll push to take one early because they have basically gone out and overpaid to get their defensive line once again deep and looking good.
So D-Lou says Floyd is official. Are you hearing that same thing or?
I'm not on social media, so I'm going to go with his word.
No,
yeah.
I just went and looked. I didn't see it, but I mean, that doesn't mean he's not, I guess. I just haven't seen it reported, but maybe.
I love Floyd. I'm going to roll this highlight back. I've been asking for this guy for 3 years now. I really like this guy. Here's the highlight. Here's him with Buffalo against the
Waller in motion. Taylor trying to escape. He'll be sacked.
DeVito goes down there.
Floyd, who has come on for the Bills rush.
I just love the bend and burst of Floyd. I think in a lot of ways I'd rather have him than D Ford, than Chase Young, than Randy Gregory, than any of the guys they've really had opposite Bosa. So I like the Floyd signing, but the other one that's really exciting for me is Jordan Elliott. Just because I love Jordan Elliott when I saw him at Missouri, and I really liked him in the draft, and he's a 300-pound guy who moves exceptionally well.
We were talking about him at 31 that year, remember?
Yeah, I mean, and he's been healthy, and I know he's been on a bad defense for the most part, and then this year he was on a really good defense, and he played a lot on a bad defense. So I think there are a lot of people that were like, "Yeah, he's not very good." I see a 300-pounder with great feet who can really move. I think he was 6th or 7th in as a run defender. If the numbers that I saw earlier this week are right against the run, I thought he was 6th or 7th as far as how he was graded out as a tackle. I like the quick feet on 300 pounds. I think his best football's ahead. I think he's kind of a late bloomer type. I had a buddy who was a big Texas fan who was like distraught when he left Texas for Missouri. And just, this guy's got great talent, but it hasn't really manifested itself. And Collins is interesting too, in that Collins is enormously strong. I saw him coming out of Nebraska and I thought, oh my God, this guy is ridiculously freaky strong. And then you look at some of his highlight reels. He's got some real pass rush to him. So I like the idea of going with some younger guys, and especially with Armstead. The whole thing about it is Armstead was a really good 49er and really strong against the run, but the kinds of injuries that he had were the ones where you got to get him off your roster as fast as possible, because they're going to be recurring. He's going to have recurring plantar fasciitis issues, and he's missed a lot of games the last couple of years. And I don't know. I think I thought their front had grown stale, and they're not going to change the coach. They're not going to change, Bosa out. So, and they just signed Hargrave. So you only have limited spots where you can make some adjustments. And I was okay with Armstead moving out. Armstead, from what I'm reading, guys, went to Jacksonville. That's official now.
Yeah.
He took $17 million. Do you know what the Niners were offering him? Because I guess the tax rate is just that great.
I think it's less about the taxes and the principle, right? It's very different asking somebody to take a pay cut versus offering somebody a new salary for a job. And I also think
he
when
was
you look
set
at
to
the
make
amount
roughly that 17. No, I was just going to say he was set to make roughly that 17.
Right,
so if
but
they asked him to take a pay cut, then that's less than what Jacksonville gave him. Plus, you add in the tax thing. So yeah, go ahead.
And then the principle of it, not to mention, I think the principle of it is what ultimately had the Niners let go, right? Because they're ultimately only saving $2 million on Eric Armstead. They have $26 million of dead cap with Eric Armstead this year. They didn't want to pay a defensive tackle $28 million. That's what it came down to. And I think that's why they allowed him to go seek another deal, and he was able to do that, and they let him go.
Okay, so now we've talked about who they've added. What do you think of who
I got
lost?
one for you guys on Floyd, though, before we go there.
Yeah, go for it.
I think the thing with Floyd that's interesting is when you look at Floyd in this front, particularly because he's like 245, 250 pounds, you don't ideally think of him as big enough to set the edge, right? But the thing with Floyd is he's a fairly fluid athlete, actually dropping back in coverage, and he can play off the ball just a little bit. He did it for the Rams, right? They had a 3-4 defense. He played in the 3-4 defense as a outside 3-4 linebacker. He dropped into coverage. Sometimes he had to be the overhang defender. Like, he did these things. Do you think there's a chance that Leonard Floyd does a kind of inverse modern day Bruce Irvin, where he plays strong side linebacker on the first couple downs? Problem is, Niners now play an actual 4-3, so he really has to be an off the ball linebacker. He doesn't play it on the tight end. So it's a little different than what Bruce Irvin did. But do you think there's a possibility, or do you think he's been exclusively signed to rush the passer on third down the way D Ford was?
I mean,
I think he's a pass rusher.
I would assume that as well. But let's also pay attention to Gross Matos just came from a 3-4 himself. Now, he started in a 4-3, but last year they ran a 3-4. You look at some of the things that Staley did. How much are they going to allow him to influence things? Are they going to be able to mix these things in and kind of run a hybrid type of defense depending on the players that are in? I don't know. I'm really not sure exactly how they're going to.
Gross Matos comes from the same defense. EJ Evero was Brandon Staley's defensive back coach with the Rams.
Yep. So that's something to pay attention to. I don't know exactly what they're going to do, but back to Larry's point about Floyd, I'm excited about Floyd as well, because you talked about D Ford. this defense was at its best when D Ford was playing opposite of Bosa. And
Yeah.
we didn't get to see it very often, but when it did, it was magic. And that was a rookie Bosa and an injured D Ford. Now you've got a healthier version of what D Ford probably was, which is a speed rusher with some bend and versatility and athleticism, and a Bosa that's matured and not a rookie. So that tandem can be absolutely devastating, I think, for the NFL if they play this right. So I'm actually looking very forward to those two.
Very durable too.
How about the departures? How do you guys feel about the departures? Sam Darnold moved on. Who else? Let's see. Sam Darnold moved on.
Javon Kinlaw.
Cleveland Farrell signed with the Commanders. Who did you just say there?
Javon Kinlaw.
Javon Kinlaw with the Jets.
Right.
Who else has moved?
Eric Armstead. We just
Ray
obviously.
just went to the Falcons. I have no problem with any of the departures so far. In fact,
Isaiah Oliver signed
Oh
somewhere.
yeah. But
You
was
know,
that
I
was
would-
that
I would
really
give-
a
I would have
departure
give-
because he was like a cut?
Yeah, I would have given him a ride. I would have paid for his Uber. But I mean, you look at this of their free agents. I expect Randy Gregory to be gone. I expect Chase Young to be gone. Ray's in Atlanta, 2 years, $6 million. Fine with that. I expect Tayshaun to be gone. I expect Oren Burks to be gone. Ross Dwelly, Matt Pryor, Logan Ryan, Sebastian Joseph Day. I expect all those guys to be gone. I did a video earlier today that I said I expect Feliciano, Conley, and Flanagan Fowles to stay. I think Flanagan Fowles has since
He just signed. Yep.
he just signed, so he is back. It's a 1-year deal for Flanagan Fowles. How do you feel about the guys who have left? Do you have any trepidation on any of the guys who walked out the door?
No, not really, except for, Armstead is an excellent player. He was a good player for a long time. He was a leader. He was a guy that they really relied upon to set the culture. I mean, what people forget with Armstead in his career is the amount of change that he had to go through, right? He was drafted when Eric Mangini was the defensive coordinator during the Jim Tomsula transition year. He got hurt trying to play in the 3-4. Then he had to play with Jim O'Neill as a 5 technique. That didn't really work out for anybody. Then he had to lose. I think he lost 15 pounds in 2017 to play the Leo pass rusher role for the 49ers defense. Then he put that weight down and basically became what they hoped Solomon Thomas would become when they drafted him, a guy who can play big end on base downs and then play inside. Then when they lost to Forrest Buckner, he kicked inside and became an excellent defensive tackle. He's been a long tenured, long performing, reliable player for the 49ers, and he's been fairly healthy except for the last 2 seasons. I understand why they moved off of him, but he's just a terrific player. So, of course, you're going to miss him. And he's also seems to be a terrific human. He's been year after year their annual Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee. It's him every single year. So I'm assuming that a presence like that is somebody that's going to be missed.
Keenan Allen just got traded to the Bears for a 4th-round pick.
Wow, only a 4th for Keenan.
That's a clear
contract,
That's
man.
Cap.
That contract is brutal.
Yeah,
for 8 yards a catch too.
It's a nice little pickup for the Bears.
For a little running back.
Okay, so there's a report on 49er Web Zone right now that the Niners are showing interest in Devondre Campbell, the linebacker, and for Green Bay, 8-year vet, first team All-Pro in 2021. He got released on Wednesday. He's 6'4", 232 pounds. He played at Minnesota, 4th-round pick in 2016. I don't love this. To me, I like speed at linebacker. Devondre Campbell, I don't think can run. I think he's a liability in coverage. I think if you put him out on the field, people are going to target him and exploit him. I much would have rather seen them gone with like Zach Cunningham or Devin Bush. Devin White was one of my favorites too, but I know there's a price tag on him. But Devin Bush, Zach Cunningham, Jerome Baker, Isaiah Simmons, they're all out there. I'd rather have every one of those guys over Devondre Campbell. How do you guys feel about Devondre?
Devondre's fine. He's not the typical 49ers linebacker, though. I mean, he's like, what is he like? He's like he's massive. He's like 6'4", 240 or something. So, and I think he's 30, 31 years old. So he's not your typical 49ers linebacker. To me, the 49ers always tend to hit. And this is why Jalen Graham is so exciting for me. Like, I'm so intrigued by him because ex-safety, converted linebacker. That's what the 49ers do. They take guys that were ex-safeties, turned into linebackers in their college career, and then they come to the 49ers and they shine. And that's exactly what he is. I tend to agree with you. I would prefer to go with somebody younger than Campbell, but also I understand the situation that the 49ers are in. When they brought in Kendricks, presumably, I thought it made a lot of sense because it was a one-year deal and it's a stopgap guy for hopefully, 4 to 6 weeks at most until Greenlaw is back and hopefully performing at 90% of what Greenlaw was before. So I don't think guys like Al-Shaair ever made sense. The way that their timelines lined up didn't make sense to me. The money never made sense to me. But an older guy on a one-year deal does. I just don't know if he necessarily fits. Good player and has been a good player, but very, very different from what the 49ers tend to look for here.
So guys, I disagree with both of you pretty much across the board here. So one thing regarding the frame, Fred Warner is listed at 6'3", 230. Campbell is 6'4", 232. And in regarding to whether he can run, I mean, the guy's been able to run his entire career. He ran 4.58 at the combine. He had a 1.67 10-yard split. The guy can straight up run. He was a first-team All-Pro 2 years ago. I think he's still a good player. I thought he had a good playoff game versus the 49ers. I don't know how he played this year. I'm going to be honest with you. Green Bay's defense isn't something I watched a lot of this year, and he got cut, so I'm assuming it's not like he played great. But this is a player who's played well in the past. He's a player who's played well against the 49ers. He has familiarity with Kyle, right? Him and Deion Jones were the two OG undersized linebackers for Dan Quinn in terms of weight that were just flying around in 2018 and 2019. He played very well against the 49ers in 2019. He played very well against them in 2021 in the week 3 game. This isn't Eric Kendricks. Like, I would have much rather had Eric Kendricks. I think Eric Kendricks is flat out better in every way, like you said, Jesse. But I like this deal. If you're saying, okay, they don't have Greenlaw and they need a veteran player for 1 year, I think this is a player that could play very well for them. I do.
He is a good tackler and a good run defender. I will give him that. But at this stage in his career, he is a liability. I think he can be picked on. If you've got a tight end or running backs that can pick on him, you can pick on him.
In that Joe Barry defense, though, is a little different from playing weak side linebacker next to Fred Warner in this defense. Like, stylistically, it suits him a little bit better too. I'm thinking more about what he was when he was in Atlanta playing next to Deion Jones. That was literally him.
That's fair.
I'll be eager to see how they use him because, the Niners have their linebackers, they'll make them cover that. They'll make the two linebackers, the stack backers, cover that entire second level. And I'm just kind of questioning whether he can cover that second level. I'm really surprised to hear you say that he ran 4.5 back in the day. Because I've never really thought of him as a burner. He was a very productive player there for a while.
Yeah, he's a smooth runner. He doesn't have, for example, Greenlaw probably runs 4.6, but Greenlaw has an explosive go at 5 yards when he just goes and hits you that you see. Campbell is kind of just one smooth speed, but he doesn't have that instant acceleration that makes you feel explosive in speed. So he's fast, but I know what you mean when you say, I never feel like he's just exploding on my screen with speed. Whereas Chris Borland was slow, right? But he could play really fast at times. That's that he just plays, he knows where he's going and he's just exploding to places.
He didn't have any forced fumbles. He didn't have any picks. He didn't have any sacks. He had one fumble recovery. He did, though, have 14 tackles against Minnesota, and then he had 14 tackles in a loss against Atlanta. So, I mean, two games of 14 tackles. 14 tackles is a lot of tackles. Mm-hmm. We'll see where it goes. I was just hoping for a speed guy. I'd rather see them, go get somebody in the draft. Who can really run. But, truth be told, I mean, I've been talking about this all year. I'd rather see Jalen Graham get the run. I really think Jalen Graham's special, but we'll see. They'll solve it in training camp, and we'll find out one way or another what they're going to do at linebacker. The other one that I thought was kind of interesting, Mike Silver is reporting that the Niners are showing interest in free agent safeties. and he's got Julian Blackman. He's got Simmons, who's been rumored to maybe be going to the Rams, and Cam Curl, who I really liked from
Cam Curl's a
Washington.
stud, yeah.
If they can get Cam Curl, I think that's a really nice upgrade. Cam Curl would be very exciting to me. And I guess this is about Talanoa not being healthy probably until middle of the year, maybe. Is that the concern? How do you guys read that?
Well, I also think that they need a third safety, right? Like they've traditionally, if they have three good safeties, they will play three good safeties. And I think having that third safety is important to them. Gibson's not going to be here. So I would assume that either way, they need the depth. Absolutely.
I'm gonna pause something real quick and let both of you guys go again on this, because I don't think you guys read the article. And in the article, the excerpt on Hufanga, he says there's no guarantee Hufanga will be the starter when he comes back, even though he was a first-team All-Pro.
Who's saying this?
Mike Silver.
Oh.
He wrote this. So I don't know if that means what you're saying, Krug, that, Hufanga won't be a starter because there's no guarantee he will be healthy, or it's we didn't necessarily like how Hufanga played in 2023, and he's in a contract year and coming off of an injury. He better earn his full stripes all the way back. Otherwise, sorry, dude, we don't want to pay you and we're moving on. You can pick which of the two, or maybe it's a little bit of a mixture of both. But what do you guys think with that added to this?
Well, I mean, listen, Silver seems to be on it, so I'm not going to take away from what he's saying. That being said, I look at the 49ers and I look at some of the ages across the board. Let's say they bring in a Cam Curl who's younger.
He's 24. What's so exciting about Curl is that he's damn good and he's only 24. And if
he'll be 25, he'll be 25 at the end of the month, though. I mean, he's almost 25. But either way,
he had 115 tackles this year. 1, 2, 3, 4 games with 10 plus tackles. It's pretty damn good. He had 9 against the Niners.
No, he definitely is. So let's say you bring in a guy like Cam Curl and you look at some of the players that they've brought in. We talk about that linebacker position until Greenlaw's back, and even when Greenlaw is back, it just feels like, at least on the defense, they're going to promote competition. They're going to figure out who the best players are. I don't think that they're married to any one of them, and whoever shows out during training camp and preseason, everybody's really, truly going to have to earn their job. I know that every year it's like everybody's got to go out and earn their job. Well, not everybody, but in some of those situations and some of those positions, they are going to have to earn their job. You're going to have to figure out who the starting defensive tackle is. I mean, you would lean Collins now, certainly. You're going to have to figure out who the starting edge is. Of course, Floyd's probably going to get the most burn there, but you're going to have to figure out who's starting next to Fred Warner, assuming Greenlaw's not there. And then, between your 3 young safeties, if you get a guy like Curl, you're going to have to figure out which two fit together best and are playing the best. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of competition there. And then the second corner, outside corner spot, that's going to get interesting as well, unless they bring in a big name. So there's going to be a lot of competition, a lot of younger players and a lot of competition. And I'm not mad at that necessarily.
So that, I actually think that's a cool segue I wanted to ask you guys about for this show, because I think that the secret position that they're going to go in the draft is corner, because I have this sneaky thing based on the fact that they signed Leonard Floyd and all of that. I have this sneaky suspicion that Brandon Staley seems to have some sort of an influence on, or not some sort of an influence. He seems to have an influence on the defensive signings. They seem to sign guys that seem to fit who he would like. And the thing is, you've got Lenore coming on a contract year. You've got Mooney Ward coming on a contract year. You've got Ambry Thomas not proven to be a starter. You have Luter, who's kind of a developmental player that you don't know anything about. We don't really know where they stand on Womack, but all I know is he went from starting week 1, day 1 of his rookie year to not being basically inactive through the majority of the back half of last year. That's not a good sign for him and where his career trajectory is. Brandon Staley's paid J.C. Jackson a lot of money. They developed Michael Davis with the Chargers. He was an okay player for a little bit. They drafted Asante Samuel Jr. high. They had Jalen Ramsey. The corner position in his defense, specifically the star position, the nickel position, Vic Fangio made it very important. Remember, he went and paid Carlos Rogers. if they're going to make Diamador Lenore their full-time nickel corner, all of a sudden they need a guy to start on the outside next to Charvarius Ward this year, and possibly as their number one corner if they can't sign Charvarius Ward beyond. I think the all-in on defensive line is to open up space to try and take a corner early in the draft. Do you think I'm crazy with this line of thinking because this regime has never made that sort of investment other than the Ward buy, or do you think that's what this is kind of trending to, and that's why they went so all in on defensive line in the free agency period?
I think that when you look at it, to me, no, I don't think that you're crazy as far as taking a corner. I think that Charvarius Ward, Krug and I, right before you got backstage, Vish, we were talking about the money situation with the 49ers and why technically Floyd and a couple of these other guys haven't officially signed. Not that they're going anywhere. They're kind of waiting for the 49ers to clear up cap space.
Ward's going to restructure.
I think Ward's going to restructure or extend, and that'll free up some money. I fully expect that one to happen. And so look for that in the upcoming days. That being said, I still expect them to go get a corner. And not only could they do it early in the draft, whether it's pick 31 or second round, look for them to be shopping maybe their second round pick for a corner as well. A guy that's maybe, year 2, year 3 that has fallen out of favor or, has a lot of talent, what have you. I know that Newsom's a name that was brought up by Marco a couple days ago, and that's picked up some steam amongst 49ers fans. But, whether it's Newsom or somebody else, I would expect the 49ers to be aggressive in shopping that second round pick and see if they can get a guy that's already in the league that they like and can kind of trust to potentially move there either. So whether they draft a guy or they trade a pick for a guy, I could see either happening, certainly.
I mean, there's L'Jarius Sneed. There's obviously Surtain out there. I mean, those are shutdown corners. I'll tell you that one of the guys that there's a lot of good corners in this draft. I mean, it's a really good corner draft. I talked to Samuel Womack late in the year, and he was like talking for days about how great Quinyon Mitchell is, who he played with at Toledo. And then Quinyon had 4 picks in a game this year, then went to Indy and lit it up. So, Quinyon is a
4-3, 4-2.
Yeah, I mean, and he probably isn't going to be there, now for the Niners. He probably doesn't even get to 31, but I mean, he's great. I thought one of the most amazing moments of the combine was when Terrion Arnold took to the mic and started thanking his mother. And I mean, you can see what an incredible kid he is. He's a redshirt sophomore. In a lot of ways, he's a blue chipper. I mean, I love Terrion Arnold. He's probably going in the top 15. Nate Wiggins is amazing, but he's super skinny. Kool-Aid McKinstry is a very good corner, but he doesn't run terrific.
Didn't he have a Liz Frank injury or something too?
He also has a Liz Frank injury. Kamari Lassiter ran like 4.6 at the Georgia Pro Day or whatever. So he looks awesome, but his 40 time is going to drag him down. And then you get TJ Tampa from Iowa State, super violent and physical. What a hitter he is. Enos Rakestraw from Missouri is he wore number 1, and he's just really, really physically dominant. I was at Cal Auburn this year.
I love how Krug just threw it. He wore number 1. Okay, go ahead.
I mean, the guy wears
Krug just wanted to make sure the crowd knows that he's done his research. He's watched his tape.
I mean, when you wear
I love
one,
it though.
To me, when you wear number 1, that's kind of like my shit don't stink. Like I'm the man up in this beast.
Is that why Debo switched to number 1?
Yeah, exactly. But Rakestraw is, super skinny, but he's incredible. DJ James from Auburn had the game-clinching interception that beat Cal this year at a game that I was at. Mikey Sainra still is the captain, I believe, from Michigan. He's really tiny, but he's amazing. He had a big interception to clinch the title game. The guy that I love is Max Melton from Rutgers because he hits like a truck. The Niners have supposedly worked him out like 5 or 6 times or met with him 5 or 6 times. This guy, he's smart. He's tough. He's kind of like healthy, younger Emmanuel Mosley. He reminds me of that. And I love him. He's slated to go anywhere in the second round. So you could probably trade back in the first round, 10 spots, get more picks and go get that kid in the second round. I mean, it's a good draft. Renardo Green from Florida State, very good player. And there's more after that. The kid who played in Toronto for the Argonauts in the Canadian League, Quantez Stiggers, looked phenomenal in the East-West Shrine game. There's a lot of guys. Willie Drew from Virginia State is a good player. So there's a lot of good corners. I know they're going to go after a corner for sure. They probably should go after a couple, because it seems like, the game's going to, more corners and less safeties, and you can play corners at safety and if need be. But you know what? Would you guys be against dealing with Kansas City? Would you be against giving Kansas City the second round pick for Snead, or do you not want to do that kind of a deal again?
I mean,
that's the problem, right?
That's the problem. Yeah, they don't have money, man. It's just not realistic. If they did have money, no, I certainly wouldn't be against it. I don't care. I mean, a lot of people are like, "Oh, you can't trade with this team because they're in division or they're a rival." At the end of the day, does it make the team better? If it makes the team better, then who cares what it does for the other team? You worry about what you can control, which is making your team better. And if it makes your team better, you go get a player, regardless of who it is you're dealing with. That being said, Snead's I don't think he's realistic. I mean, we just talked about they're trying to figure out how to get under the cap right now, just so they can sign their free agents that they've announced as to signing. So,
damn, dude, the Chiefs got Hollywood Brown. That is a great move.
Did they really?
Hollywood Brown.
That's what the chat is saying.
Well, you knew they were going to get somebody, right, at wide receiver.
Yep. Done deal.
Well,
oh my God.
Hollywood Brown,
1 year, $11 million, man.
Hollywood Brown is about to make a bag next year and pick him up in fantasy.
Not only that, Chiefs also added Irv Smith, a second tight end.
I know.
You think Irv Smith is ever going to live up to his talent?
Well, in Kansas City, I think he's got a real good opportunity to. I kind of like Irv Smith. And if you put him in a really good offense with a creative play caller, that kind of
he was in Cincinnati, right, with Joe Burrow last year.
I kind of like.
Before that, he was in Minnesota with Kevin O'Connell and Kirk Cousins. That's not too bad.
Yeah, I mean he's a young player, but I see an improving player. I would not be surprised if he was good this year. Okay, let's get to the wide receiver talk. We're 37 minutes in. There was a rumor today on Twitter that the Ravens had called the Niners asking about a trade for Debo, which the Ravens have already added, Derrick Henry. And, now we know they have Lamar. So you got the best running quarterback, and then you just added a horse of a tailback, and now you want Debo, like the ultimate running wide receiver. Giving them Debo might be delivering them the Super Bowl. I mean, that's how incredible and diverse their rushing attack could potentially be with Debo. So you got that going on, and then the LaCosta is his name, or DaCosta, Eric DaCosta, the general manager, basically came out and said, no, that ain't true. That's not true. So I don't know if it's true or not, but that rumor's out there. The other one that's out there is a young lady in Jacksonville. What's her name? I had it here. Mia O'Brien, Jacksonville Jags reporter, says Aiyuk interest mutual between the Jags and his reps. Now, people read that and were like, well, wait a second. The Niners aren't saying that. No, it's not mutual between the Jags and the Niners. Otherwise, maybe the deal would be done. It's mutual between Aiyuk's representation and the Jags, that he's interested in them and they're interested in him being in Jacksonville. What do you think? I mean, it's a premier position. He turns 26 this week. His best football, I think, is ahead of him. He's on, he's due to make $14 million this year. He wants a new deal. He says he wants a new deal after the free agent period goes by. So, you look at the money that has been thrown around to Ridley and what's coming for Jefferson, and there's reason to believe that he's going to be asking for $30 million plus a year. Jaguars own the 17th pick in the draft. Would you move Aiyuk or Debo, or are the Niners absolutely going to go forward this next year with Aiyuk, Deebo, and JJ. What do you guys think?
Go ahead, Vish.
Yeah, so that's a little bit different than some of the stuff that you were talking about there before. So I kind of want to touch on that, which is like Aiyuk to the Jaguars first, which is from Aiyuk's standpoint, like I understand what his representatives are doing, right? They identified a team with a young quarterback, B, the cap space and the capacity technically on paper, theoretically, if they wanted to pay him, and then C, where he's the clear-cut number one option on the Jaguars. You also get the quote-unquote mutual interest from the Jaguars or Jaguars, which one do you guys prefer?
Jaguars.
Let's go with Jaguars.
Can we make it a soft J? Can we say Jaguars?
Jaguars.
Is that out of the realm of possibility? I just want to.
Okay. Right. Steve Smith has texted in. He says, "Go with Jags." Go with
Jags. Okay, we'll go with Jags. Okay. For the Jags, right? Just another guy, just another team. Brandon Aiyuk makes sense because he would become easily their number one receiver immediately. But let's look at the people involved in this equation. We're talking about Trent Baalke, who 2 years ago gave record money to Christian Kirk, just doled out $10+ million to Gabe Davis. They paid Evan Ingram last year a ton of money as a number one tight end. And now you're going to tell me they're going to ship a first-round pick and pay Brandon Aiyuk even more money, a position that Trent Baalke has historically hated drafting. He's drafted poorly, and he's also signed poorly in free agency. I don't know that one necessarily makes sense. I think it's just Aiyuk's representation just pushing forward and negotiating and trying to create traction for the 49ers. Now, to the second part of your question, do I think the 49ers go forward with Aiyuk and Deebo this offseason? Yes, because I think what ultimately would make them move off of Aiyuk would be getting the kind of pick that would allow them to draft a wide receiver that has similar talent to Aiyuk, right? And you would want to get one of the top 4 or 5, 6 receivers best in the draft. There's probably 5 receivers maybe going in the top 20, I would say. I don't know how you guys look at the wide receivers, but that's how they seem to be stacking out. And so because of that, I don't know a lot of teams that would make that move in the top 20 anyway. And that's why I think Brandon Aiyuk and Deebo Samuel ultimately end up with the 49ers next year and possibly help them with the Super Bowl run.
What do you think,
Jesse? When I look at the Ravens rumor, first of all, great. The team denied it. Sure. We can talk about that. The Ravens, we know, were also interested around the time that they were figuring out if they could sign Debo. And usually teams don't stop being interested in players unless, of course, they've gotten a major injury or they've fallen off a cliff. Neither of those have happened to Debo. So, yeah, I'm sure they are interested in Debo. I'm sure they did pick up the phone. I'm sure the conversation was very short. It was probably went like, yeah, we're going to take a massive cap hit. You can maybe call us after June 1st and try again when it's feasible for us to do. But until then, like, it's not really a possibility for us. Right. So not likely that one happens. And then as far as Aiyuk goes, it is the most tradable asset that they have. It just is, because 0 cap hit if you trade him. It's going to bring you the most back. All of that lines up. All of that plays. But if I have to take my guess, I'm going to bet that he's on this team. That being said, again, every time one of these wide receivers gets paid big money, a guy like Pittman, a guy like Ridley, we saw Mike Evans get paid. That's not helping the 49ers negotiations. And this is what always frustrated me about the 49ers is that they wait so long. They're usually the last ones to make a move on their player. And I think it always ends up costing them a couple million every single time they do one of these deals. Now, the interesting thing is the rumor came out, or the report came out, that they were going to work on a deal basically between free agency and the draft with Aiyuk. Well, that's not encouraging for me, because when I look at what the 49ers do, and they traditionally wait until later in the offseason, that just tells me that they're trying to figure out what his number is. And if they don't think it's feasible, they're going to try to shop him and trade him. That's what that tells me. So do I ultimately think that happens? No, but I do think it's more of a possibility than people want to think. You know, people really think like teams don't call on these players and the 49ers don't listen. It's not like the 49ers are sitting there going, la, 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 we're not listening. No, every time somebody calls, they're like, yeah, what do you think? They're going to listen. And if they like the offer, they're going to make a trade. These guys in the front offices are not tied to players the way that you, myself, Vish, and everybody in this chat might be, because we're fans. They do not care. This is a business. If it makes my team better, if I like what you're offering, this player can go. So everybody's expendable.
Right. And I will say one thing real quick, Jesse, because you didn't make this point, but you kind of hinted at it, right? I think it's the Calvin Ridley deal, and how is that going to affect Brandon Aiyuk? I will remind people that the Jaguars threw historic money at Christian Kirk, and people were really scared on what it was going to do to AJ Brown, DK Metcalf, Terry McLaurin, and Debo Samuel, who were all coming up. They all held out and they all got less money. And I think Debo, DK, Terry McLaurin, and AJ Brown all fit in, I think, somewhere between 5 to 10 in the NFL when they ultimately got paid in terms of highest receivers in the NFL being paid. So I know what you're saying, and I think that there's validity to that point. And I'm not saying just because it happened with Christian Kirk, it's now going to happen with Calvin Ridley and Brandon Aiyuk. I just wanted to throw it out there too. So we're considering all the variables that may not possibly, who knows, factor in the Brandon Aiyuk deal. Sorry, Krug, I cut you off.
I would say prepare yourself for a trade. Prepare yourself for a trade. If you're one of these people that is going to be like emotionally bent if one of your guys gets traded, prepare yourself for a trade. Why? Because Tyreek Hill was awesome in Kansas City and he got traded. And Devontae Adams was absolutely Green Bay's best receiver and he got traded. And AJ Brown was an awesome young player for Tennessee and he got traded. And I just think that it just seems like the NFL personnel world. I mean, also I would say to anybody, don't tell me what everybody's saying. Tell me what they're doing. If you have, you listen to what somebody says, but if they're doing things, pay attention to what they're doing over what they're saying. And look what the Niners are doing. They're interviewing, Talieisi Fuaga. They're interviewing J.C. Latham. They're interviewing guys that are going to go in the middle of the first round. So on some level, they want to be prepared for swapping, either trading up or swapping one of these receivers and getting up into higher in the first round. So I would say prepare for it.
Do you think they can get a top 20 pick for Brandon Aiyuk?
In the deal that we're talking about here, I think he's going to Jacksonville for like 17. And here's the thing: if you're Trent Baalke and you can't pick a rookie receiver, maybe it's in your best interest to go sign a free agent. Because you're right, he has done a horrible job of handicapping rookie receivers. And let's be honest about rookie receivers, even if they're great, a lot of times there's a 1 year off period. So you could love Malik Neighbors, but if you got one more year on your contract, and Malik Neighbors takes 1 year to adjust to the league, you're just drafting for somebody else. So I don't know. I mean, I think that, let me ask you guys this. What do you think the cutoff number is on AAV for Aiyuk's deal, since his group wants to wait till after the market's kind of been reset and reestablished? The Niners clearly, by looking at all these players that are going in the middle of the first round, to me, it's like announcing that, hey, we have a number, and if it goes beyond our number, we will trade the player. What number do you think that is?
Yeah, I don't know what it is for the 49ers, but I got to imagine the floor is 26 AAV for Aiyuk.
I think it's up to Debo.
That's the starting point, right? Like for him, he's looking at it going, that better be the number that I get. That better be the number that I get. So I don't know. I don't know what the 49ers are.
Why do you say that number?
Well, first of all, I mean, again, players don't necessarily pocket watch, but he's looking across at Debo and going, okay, well, 2 years ago, you got around $24 million. The salary cap just went up X. I love you, Debo, but I think I'm better than you. And I want 26. I mean, Pittman just got 23. I'm better than him. Ridley just got 23. I'm better than him. Mike Evans had a great career. Appreciate him. But at this stage, I'm better than him. And he just got 26 or 20, whatever it was. And Jefferson's probably going to get upwards of 30. And he's like, okay, well, listen, I'm not on Jefferson's level as far as production. I can't necessarily ask for that. But I think 26, I'd be shocked if he doesn't get, and it doesn't have to happen here. It could happen somewhere else. But He deserves to get paid. I mean, go get your money, man. I'm pro player. These guys deserve to get paid. You get one opportunity at it. That's your guarantee. Go and get paid. I just don't know if the 49ers are going to be willing to meet that demand.
Yeah, I think one, I think he 100% deserves to get paid. Two, if we're talking about a top 15, top 20 pick getting traded for Brandon Aiyuk, like, I think Brandon Ayuk's a great player. I think Brandon Aiyuk deserves to be paid. I'm trading for a top 15 pick for Brandon Aiyuk. I'm running for that trade. Like, that's an easy trade for me.
That pick could be Kinlaw.
But it's a top 15 pick. Like, I don't know that they could, like, DeForest Buckner went for a top 15 pick.
That's what I'm saying.
A top 15 pick for Brandon Aiyuk. On the value chart, I understand what the pick could become.
I would want
more.
Just
in
I
terms
want
of the
I want
contract
17.
and the type of talent you're inheriting,
I need more. If I'm giving you, especially in a league where rookie receivers always start slow, and knowing that it's a win now or you're fired kind of a league. And Black Monday is just annually just a bloodletting of executives and coaches. If a team comes knocking on your door for a veteran wide receiver, that means that they have no time to waste. And if they have no time to waste, I want 2 for 1. I want a mid first round pick, like 17, and I want a third round pick. And if nobody's willing to give me that, then I'll stay with my guy. If somebody's willing to cross that bridge, I'll make the trade. That's kind of how
I think that's fair that you want to ask for that, but we've seen the market value for wide receivers. He's not going to get that. He's not going to get that. Nobody's going to offer that. Nobody's going to offer that.
Stephon Diggs had two straight 1,000-yard seasons and 4 straight 5 seasons of 700+ yards, and he was traded for a 22 and a 7th round pick. And to the Bills and the Jets and the Vikings took Justin Jefferson. And by the way, the other part of this question, I think Brandon Aiyuk does deserve to cross this number, but based on what we've seen the Niners and how they've negotiated in the past, I think their threshold is going to be right at $23 million where Debo Samuel is. I think that's what they're going to do. I think they're going to negotiate that way because they're going to say when Debo came, he was more marketable than you. He was the number 1 option in our offense, and he was a first-team All-Pro, and that's why he got this money, and you didn't do any of those things. And now you can tell me, Vish, you're completely wrong, and you can be Brandon Aiyuk's agent and argue against that. But I think the Niners, who bargain hard, we know how they bargain. I think that they're going to try to bargain hard that way with Aiyuk. We know that they've had issues crossing their star players in the past. I brought it up in the past. Mike Upati, they didn't want to pay him because they didn't want him to cross Joe Staley, who signed an extension early and didn't ask for a raise at that time, even though he was severely underpaid. So they couldn't afford Upati. I think Debo's a team captain. Debo has been a long tenured player. I understand, but I think there is a roster politics element to it. I don't think they'll try to cross Debo.
It's going to be an interesting year because Jacksonville fired a lot of their staff this year, a lot of the defensive staff. There was a bloodletting there. The head coach is still there. Balky's still there. But if they fall on their face, Balky could easily be gone at the end of the year. He knows he doesn't draft rookie receivers well. He knows he needs another receiver. He might be willing to move the first round pick and another pick for Aiyuk. We'll see. We're going to find out. But
I'd fire him on the spot if he moves 17 and the 3rd round pick after paying all those guys for Brandon Aiyuk and pays him too.
Yeah, but I mean,
that's Matt Millen drafting 3 receivers in the first round 3 years in a row.
I hear you, but let's go to the mock. If you look at the mock draft and you see it where they're picking at 17, the best receiver after that is Brian Thomas.
Adonai Mitchell.
And then Keon Coleman. Then Ladd McConkey. Then Adonai Mitchell. Yeah.
Xavier Legette.
Probably Xavier Worthy.
In that conversation, but
Xavier Legette in round 2. I mean, Troy Franklin, Xavier Worthy. Those guys are 2nd round picks. Ricky Pearsall from Florida is a really good runner. He's a 2nd round pick. Trying to think who else is on this list. Looking at Devontae Walker. So it's interesting. It's like only thing I'll say is if I'm Trent Baalke, I think I'm done at the end of the year if we don't go to the playoffs and make something happen because they're not going to dump the head coach who's won a Super Bowl, and they've already dumped their staff. And, you did pick Trayvon Walker over Aiden Hutchinson, and Hutchinson is one of the great players in the entire league. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what lies ahead for Trent Baalke. Let's hit some of these supers right here. David E says, "Hi Larry, I really like the Collins pickup, but I'm curious why Houston would let this young guy go. It doesn't seem like he's outrageously expensive. Is this too good to be true?" What's your guys' read on Malik Collins being available, period?
I don't have a read on what Houston's doing. They gave up their entire starting interior defensive lineman interior defensive line, for Danielle Hunter. Okay, like what happens next? I'm kind of waiting for the next with Houston. But with Collins, it's just that he's really, his biggest value is as a pass rusher. And so because of that, he's not necessarily a guy like that is like, oh my God, we have to keep him. He is a guy that you are capable of finding. Now, that doesn't mean he's not valuable. Just because you can find many of one thing doesn't mean having one of those things isn't valuable. And he's a really good player. He's really good at creating interior pressure. He's disruptive. He plays with the high motor, and he's going to fit that role. It's more about fit, and I don't necessarily know what Houston's doing on their interior defensive line. And I will say, Krug, by the way, Trayvon Walker had 10 sacks last year, okay? It's let's slow down.
I mean, he's not
go there, okay?
No, I know, but he's not Aiden Hutchinson.
He may end up being better. He
might be better. I mean, Trent's open. Houston.
He's telling you about Gerald Hodges too.
Well, Trent signed Lorenzo Fadakazi real early, and then Tim Settle from Buffalo. They have McTelvin Agim, who's a decent player. I don't know what Houston's thinking. I will say this: I do like Collins. The film looked good. And he's a strong player. There's no question about that. So I like the strength against the run. I like the pass rush, quick feet. I'm old Greg says, Mekhi Becton. Why are the Niners not going for him? I think everybody's kind of staying away from Becton. Has he had any visits at all?
The Cincinnati had him in, right? Yesterday?
Oh, yeah, maybe they did. Yeah, you might be right about that.
But it's a medical risk, right, with him? Mm-hmm. That's what it is, right?
Bone on bone.
How many games did he play this year, though?
Let's see. Here's the question, though. How much does the playing in the what did they call it? Pillowy? How do they describe the field turf in MetLife Stadium? Like pillowy? How much does that affect his knees? And by the way, I'm sorry, but it was a thought I had thinking about Javon Kinlaw too. Like first, I was shocked he got $6.9 or $8 million fully guaranteed. Like shout out to Javon Kinlaw. Did not expect that kind of money for him this offseason. Good for him.
No, not at all.
But I'm a little worried about his
He played
knee.
16 last year.
He played 16 games. I was just looking it up.
Yeah.
16 games.
Did he
he played?
How many did he start?
He's a house. I mean,
16.
He's the biggest guy there is.
Oh, he started all 16. Okay.
Yeah.
Shows you how little I watched the Jets after Aaron Rodgers went down.
Yeah.
Daza, he could be running for office. Daza says prior to the draft would feel better about the offseason if we could trade Debo for a good O-lineman or corner or tight end player.
So with the Niners, man.
A lot of Niner fans want to move off Debo. Have you noticed that? That's a very popular sentiment.
He had a bad Super Bowl.
I understand people would rather move Debo than Aiyuk, but man, Debo, I think Kyle loves Debo. I think it would be very difficult for Kyle to move off Debo. Maybe I'm wrong.
I'm sure it would be difficult. I threw this out there. So last night I did a show with Grant, and he said, well, assume they trade Debo, but it's after June 1st and it's the Ravens. What would the trade be? And I said, how about Isaiah Likely in a future third or fourth?
And I kind of understand, and I kind of retweeted that. I like Isaiah Likely. Now, my buddy is the Coastal Carolina recruiting coordinator, so I've heard about Isaiah Likely for years, and I loved him in the draft. I see his potential. In a lot of ways, he's a great young tight end, maybe a future Pro Bowler. So I think people who immediately were like, no way, Isaiah Likely. Yeah, I get it. He's a little bit of a projection.
I watch a lot of Baltimore. My son's a Ravens fan, man. I'll tell you what, I think him and Kittle could be magic.
Yeah, he's good.
Him
I
and Kittle
would
would
need
be
another pick.
major talented. That would be the most talented second tight end. That would be basically like getting Jordan Reed, but like younger, healthier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
In
I like
terms of
Isaiah.
talent, let's see what he turns out to be. He's got a
Right.
lot of talent. So I kind of get
Um,
where you're going with that too. Go ahead.
Mind
Coop.
Springer says one more for Larry Hunter Renfro. I guess what Hunter Renfro got cut today by the Raiders.
Yeah.
I think the Niners need another receiver, but I think they need a complimentary receiver. Hunter Renfro is not a complimentary receiver to what they have. The Niners need the burner. The Niners,
Speed.
you have Aiyuk, you have JJ, you have Debo. You need that separator.
Have Danny
you need,
Gray.
You need Xavier Leggett. You know, I mean, if there was a receiver in the draft, Niners need speed, right? Isn't that their at what if Kyle's
Brian
looking
Thomas
for any?
Jr.
Yeah, I mean that to me is intriguing. You know, Brian Thomas Jr., who's 6'3", 210, just ridiculous. In some ways, Brian Thomas is. When I watch him, I'm thinking, this guy's way better than Aiyuk. What are we talking about? This guy's amazing. But he is a rookie receiver. There's always projection. You just don't know. But but the rest of the receivers, I mean, to me, it's like very hit and miss. I love Marvin Harrison. Think he's great. I love Malik Neighbors. Think he's great. I don't like Adunze from Washington. I've watched him 10 times this year. I don't like him. Ladd McConkey is a really good, slot finisher in the SEC. I don't see super special with Ladd McConkey. I'm not seeing Cooper Kupp. Troy Franklin, I don't think is super special. Keon Coleman is a huge catch radius, but there's something about him that there's not a lot of separation there. Adonai Mitchell, I love.
I like
from
Adonai
Texas.
Mitchell as well.
You know,
Stud.
Worthy ran the great 40, but Mitchell was the better receiver.
The Alabama game. Go watch the Alabama game with Mitchell if you want to see like Mitchell
he's
got number
he's
one
big.
receiver potential in that game.
He's big time. Ricky Pearsall from Florida's damn good. Roman Wilson from Michigan, I think, is damn good, even though he's kind of mediocre size. Devontae Walker from North Carolina's got really kind of awesome size speed, but really, really questionable hands. Like, he drops tons of passes. Leggett is really, really good. He's one of my favorites. And then it kind of falls off. I don't love Jalen Polk. I don't love Jermaine Burton. I do love Malachi Corley, but I don't love Jalen McMillan. And I'm not sure about McCaffrey's brother. You know what I'm saying? To me, it's like there's some major hits, but there's some major misses in this wide receiver group. And it's like you make a trade and you wind up with Malik Neighbors or Brian Thomas, you're fine. But you make a trade and you wind up with, trading away Aiyuk and you get, Troy Franklin or Ladd McConkey, and it might not be fine. It might be a disaster. So that, I don't know. That's my kind of thought on that. Dazza says, why bother drafting players if we're not going to use them? Let's see what Graham and Winters have. It was very weird for those guys Graham didn't play at all. I almost had to beg Steve Wilkes at the end of the year. I'm like, how about Graham? Graham? No? It's like, well,
you heard of him? He's on your roster.
Yeah. And usually you hear some sort of positivity about like a young player like picking up in practice at the end of the year too. And I thought Graham would be one of those guys, like you mentioned, Krug. And it was like there was no whisper even of a young guy like killing it at the end of camp, like in practices. Usually there's one guy that like, oh, this guy's been killing it in practice week after week, and like he's coming along or something. There wasn't that guy for them. Maybe
I would put my name to it that this year Jalen Graham is going to have a game where people are going to be like, where the hell was this guy last year? I'm serious.
Right. Maybe he wasn't ready last year.
I think he's going to have a game where people are like, this guy couldn't get on the field last year. That's shocking.
Well, Flanagan
he's
fouls
have like a 15 tackle game.
Flanagan fouls and Oren Burks were, quality. They're like Gerald Lodge's Krug.
I really do like my veteran backers. Yeah, great. But, those guys, D Winters, I think D Winters is going to be world's better, from last year. But I think Graham's going to be crazy good.
I love that you and I both came out of, and I was only there obviously for a limited time. I was there for the 5 days, but that was like the biggest takeaway I had. It was like, if I'm pushing any agenda, it's the Jalen Graham agenda. He is phenomenal.
He was everywhere. And if you meet the kid, he's like the greatest kid of all time. He's from Detroit. He's like, oh shucks, I work here, but I'm like, dude, you're good. And he's like, yeah, I'm good. I'm good. It's like he's not going to be like a braggadocious guy, but he knows he's good. So
Yeah.
I can't wait to see what he looks like when he gets out there. Jalen LeGrant, we should be first pick, may lose 11, and Debo. Wide receiver should be the first pick. May lose Aiyuk and Debo next year. Need a number one target just in case. Also need to upgrade nickel badly and a legit kick returner. Okay, that's a good launch point. I was going to ask you guys, what is the priority going into the draft? If all the heavy lifting has pretty much been done in free agency. I mean, if they get a Cam Curl, that would be a difference maker. If they get a big time linebacker, maybe that's a difference maker. Or if they got an awesome tackle. I don't even know if one exists. But is offensive tackle the clear priority, guys? Or if not, what is?
It has to be, man. It has to be. Trent Williams. It's not just that McKivitz isn't that great of a starter, but it's also that Trent Williams' clock is ticking. I mean, it could be over at any time, and he's going to miss games every year. I mean, the next time he doesn't is the first time he doesn't. So they have to, in my opinion, prioritize tackle. And I really think that the way things may line up, that tackle might be BPA as well. Like there's an opportunity to get a good tackle, and it's a position of need. I don't know if they don't get a tackle within their first two picks. I think it would be pretty disheartening, at least for me.
By the way, it's just come across. The Eagles have signed Devin White. Oh my God!
Oh, that came across a couple hours ago.
Oh, I didn't see that. Devin White, 1 year, $7.5 million.
He stinks.
Yeah,
he's a pretty good blitzer, man. That's a good player.
That's the only thing he does.
I don't think he stinks. I think he has effort issues.
Whatever it is.
He had a down year this year, but
if
the guy.
If you ever see the guy
128,
run full speed outside the wrong gap, get protected by the real superstar, the real stud of that defense.
I didn't want to see him go to the Eagles.
Vita Vea.
Well, I was thinking Levante David, but
no.
Vita Vea too.
Vita Vea protects everybody.
Yeah. Okay, so what were we talking about exactly again before?
What's Devin the priority?
What's the priority? Yeah, Jesse nailed it. I think tackle should be a priority, but here's the thing. The McKivitz deal makes me weary on whether tackle will be a priority. I'm not saying that means they won't draft a tackle at 31, but I think they just gave themselves the security to be like, well, if we don't love the tackle that's there at 31, well, we don't have to take it because we have McKivitz locked up for the next couple years. And I think the $7 million on that 1 year for McKivitz too is also Trent Williams' security. Remember, this was a guy they drafted to be Joe Staley's replacement, possibly had they not been able to trade for Trent Williams. He was their golden helmet player. They love Colton McKivitz. I think that in their mind, they have secured the tackle position. Worst case scenario, it's going to be Colton McKivitz. And I think that's where when you start getting closer to draft time, Jesse, you're saying now best player available at 31 is going to be tackle. But last year, remember what happened. Broderick Jones went earlier than people thought. Paris Johnson went earlier than people thought. Because it's tough to find these tackles in the NFL, every draft, when you're talking about, okay, there's 4 or 5 of these super extreme elite athletes that we feel like can play left tackle in the NFL, people are going to take further chances on them, right? Like Colton Miller, like 10 years ago might not have been a top 15 pick. But because of the way tackles were coming out and because of his physical traits, the Raiders took a chance on him, and he's developed into a great left tackle. And so because of that, I think the tackles will start to go earlier. And when that happens, I think the Niners will balk a little bit at 31. Should it be on paper? Yes, absolutely. Colton McKivitz played better in the playoffs. He's not that good. That's the situation. Unfortunately, I just think that the way the Niners look at it and the way they've done business in the past, they'll feel like unless they're getting a steal, unless it's like, holy cow, that guy we thought we would go in the top 15 picks and we're sitting here at 31 and he's here at tackle, I don't think they'll force the tackle if they feel like they have number 24 on their board still available and he plays defense, a different position. I'm not going to say the position because I'm not sure. Let's say a different position versus tackle who's number 54 maybe on their board, but he's the last like real good tackle available, because they've had like 3 opportunities to do that in season past at different points on the board and they haven't done it.
Can I offer up an opposing take?
Yeah, of course.
Sure.
So I actually tend to agree with you, but as you were talking, I'm like, all right, what if the McKivitz signing was more likely? This is Trent's last year. Obviously, he's getting paid big money, and we're going to draft somebody. And we know that McKivitz might have to be the future right tackle, but we need to draft somebody to be the future left tackle. So maybe he plays guard this year to kind of just get his feet wet. Because actually, a lot of these tackles, if you look at them, a lot of them are projecting as guards, or a lot of them played guard as well. So there's some versatility there. So let's say you get one, you kick them to guard, or they play right tackle, you kick McKivitz to guard, whatever. And then next year, McKivitz is your right tackle, and then this guy's your left tackle. I think that's a possibility as well. I think it's more so, or it could be more so like, hey, we need to have a buffer in McKivitz that is either your swing tackle, or in case Trent retires, the rookie can kick to the left and he can play right. Now, I don't necessarily subscribe to that, because I tend to agree with you. Exactly what you said was my initial thoughts when they signed McKivitz. But as you were talking through it, that was just something that I thought of, like, well, maybe this is a possibility as well.
Today was the University of Arizona Pro Day, and the Niners director of college scouting was in attendance. And you say, well, who's there at Arizona? Jordan Morgan.
Yep.
Now there's Jacob Cowing and Tanner McLaughlin and Taylor Upshaw, who's Regan Upshaw's son, Michael Wiley. But the Niners were one of the teams in attendance. It is interesting. This is from Dane Brugler of The Athletic in a recent mock draft where he had Morgan going to the Niners. He said Morgan is an ideal scheme fit for San Francisco, but he also makes sense timeline sense, because he offers versatility on the line. Despite having only played left tackle in college, he can help fill in at guard or right tackle right away, and potentially be the long-term plan on the left side whenever Trent Williams decides to hang it up. Of course, the NFL draft coming up April 25th. That's interesting. And then also just looking at the draft tech.
Here's the quick question, though, real quick on Jordan Morgan before we get off of him. Does he have the arm length to play tackle? That's right. That's like, this is the problem when we start talking about, this is why corner goes as high as they go and people take chances on tackles. There is a physical requirement for these positions to play in the NFL. To play corner in the NFL, you got to be able to run on the outside. It doesn't matter the entire skill set you have to be able to run. There's certain physical requirements you need, and that's like the question with him. I haven't like studied him, so I don't know. I'm deferring to both of you, but that's that physical question mark. It's not like, oh, he's got okay arms for a tackle. He would be like below average NFL standard arm length for a tackle.
I believe the arm length is like 32 and a half, something like that. But
yeah,
I'd have to look it up. But that is a little on the shorter side.
He does.
That's T-Rex, and man, for a tackle,
it is.
32?
It is. But at the same time, when I just look at his athleticism and the fact that he's played both left and right, I mean, if he didn't have his ACL injury, what was it, 2 years ago or whatever, I think he would have already come out. He probably would have been drafted high. I think he's the most polished offensive lineman out of the group. That's just me personally. I'm not saying he's the best. That doesn't mean that his upside's the best, but I do think, like Mims, obviously, everybody talks about him, but to me, he's the most polished. Can I read something to you guys from his workouts today?
Yeah, for sure.
Sure.
So Morgan basically had 3 private workouts rather than 1 pro day workout. The New York Jets first put Morgan through an array of drills, followed by the Baltimore Ravens and then the Dallas Cowboys. The Ravens stepped up again and ran Morgan through a few more drills. Teams had Morgan run drills which simulated both left and right tackle, and he displayed his versatility, showing a lot of athleticism. His offensive line workout lasted almost an hour and had to be stopped so that other players could start their position drills. The feedback on Morgan was all good, and teams are convinced he can hold down a tackle spot in the NFL. Speaking with people, Morgan is in play with the Cowboys at 24, the Ravens at 30, the Chiefs at 32. Interesting, they didn't mention the Niners. The feeling is he certainly will not last past the Commanders pick 36, who are very high on the Arizona linemen. So there you go. I think his stock went up potentially with his pro day.
Yeah, no, it's going to be really interesting. And here's the other trend that always seems to happen as we get closer to draft day. The quarterbacks start to move up the board. And to me, that's going to be something really interesting to watch because Bo Nix looked good at his pro day. I thought there was no doubt that Michael Penix looked good in Indy. And the mock draft that I'm looking at has Michael Penix going 11. And this is granted. Now this is draft tech, so I don't know exactly how reliable this is, but I mean they're all guesswork at this point. But if you got Bo Nix and Michael Penix somehow finding their way into the first round, now that means that better players are going to slide down the board. And there's some really interesting ones right around the Niners. I mean, just to put it in perspective, Latu Latu from UCLA, who's an awesome edge rusher. They have him at 26 because of the physical problems that he has.
The medical.
So the medical. Yeah. So, maybe he could be on the board. They have Jordan Morgan going 30 right in front of the Niners, but they have J.C. Latham falling all the way to 31. And the Niners taking Latham at 31 in front of Adonai Mitchell going to Kansas City at 32. So who knows? Who knows how this is all going to shake out, but there's a bunch. It's a good tackle draft. There's no question about it. We have this one from Charlie. He says, trade Aiyuk to the Jaguars for Josh Allen, player swap, and draft a receiver in the first. Well, I don't. You think they're moving Josh Allen for?
No way. No way.
No.
Charlie. I would do that trade, Charlie. Charlie comes back with this one. Very similar to the last one. He says, trade BA to the Jaguars for Josh Allen, player swap, sign Justin Simmons, and draft a wide receiver, corner, and right guard. Top of the draft. Okay. Daza says, Debo's expensive, paid like an elite wide receiver, but he puts up average stats, no separation, not a willing blocker, not a great route runner, and often injured. Other than that, Daza's a big fan.
Hold on. Let me ask the people in the chat because I just noticed what Rocky said. Is everybody else agreeing? Am I way louder than the other two? Because I can crank my volume down. It's hard for us to hear. We just hear each other, and it's usually at the same volume. So you guys tell us, am I way louder than everybody else? Because we definitely want to fix that. I am. Yeah. Okay. I'll turn it down.
Just turn it down, man.
Just turn it down. Golly, man.
Blowing us out of the water here.
He still scored 12 touchdowns in 15 games. And I feel like a bad Super Bowl against two corners that, frankly, if I'm being honest, I don't think 49ers fans watched those two corners because they acted surprised when Snead and McDuffie did what Snead and McDuffie did for 17 games in the season and 3 games in the playoffs. What do you expect Snead and McDuffie to do? Did you think they were scrubs? This is what they have done to every receiver duo, and they did exactly that to the 49ers receiving duo. And people are looking at that and looking at, Debo Samuel got hurt, and they decided to throw the ball 3 times to him on third down after he got hurt and being like, yep, get rid of Debo, he's done, whatever. I'm not saying Debo is perfect. I think there's a lot of valid reasons to look at Debo's contract and question him, and there's a lot of things to question about him. But I think the outrageous reaction to him having a bad Super Bowl and that being highlighted by a few people, particularly that people have watched and just been like, okay, that's what this is. The Super Bowl was terrible. He was bad. That's what it is. I think it's become a little tiresome.
Yeah. Can you guys let me know if the volume is better now as well? But I'm gonna push back on that just a little bit because what I've seen happen over the last 2 years, a lot of it was talking about his effort issues, and people kind of swept that under the rug because it's Debo and Debo's so good and he has these games and he's great. So then they get to the Super Bowl and he doesn't perform, and then it's all of a sudden everybody starts peeling back the onion a little bit and was like, well, didn't people say he had effort issues and didn't this and didn't that? And so they start to really kind of figure it out. And they're like, well, all right, now this made me look at him in a whole different light. when before I was kind of standing up for him and protecting him because he was so good, but in the biggest game, he didn't perform like that. So now I am going to look at the things that were being said about him, pointed out by guys like JT O'Sullivan and whoever else talking about his effort issues when he doesn't have the ball. And now all of a sudden those things matter. It is funny how those things do work out, because I know we've been talking about his questionable effort issues without the ball for years, and nobody wanted to hear it. But all of a sudden he doesn't have a good Super Bowl, and now everybody brings that up.
Right. And that pushback I'm here for, right? Because there's certain things about Debo Samuel the last 2 seasons when you look at the contract he got that you could argue, yeah, like, hey, he hasn't lived up to it. He hasn't been as healthy as the 49ers would like. He's self-admitted that his 2022 season was what he called terrible. Okay, all of those things are true. But to look at the game and say, okay, he struggled versus McDuffie in that game and being like, yes, that's why we need to zero in on Debo's issues. I think that's what I have a problem with. Because again, McDuffie was a first-team All-Pro corner. Snead should have been a first-team All-Pro corner. These are 2 of the 5 or 6 best corners in football.
They're the reason that Kansas City got over in the game. Is those 2 guys are awesome, and they did a great job. I mean, Purdy threw a dime to Debo in the end zone, and McDuffie made the play. I mean, it was a dime. It was a flat-out dime.
Debo got missed too.
The other thing about Debo is like these guys they're not superheroes. I mean, this guy went out of the Green Bay game. I asked Shanahan the first day of media availability before the Detroit game and the NFC Championship game. I said, "What's the deal with Debo's shoulder?" He's like, "It hurts." So, I mean, he either had a fracture, a bone bruise, a partially torn labrum, a rotator cuff. I mean, the guy was playing in the Super Bowl compromised for sure. So,
yeah, but everybody was compromised. Your guy Allegretti had a torn UCL, man.
Right.
Like, I don't. If you're either playing or you're not, man. You're either playing or you're not.
And he played, and Debo did play,
and he did. That's what I'm saying. So he was there. So the excuses go out the window.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, we may not have seen the best of Debo that day. I don't know if that I would hold that up and say Debo sucks. You know what I mean?
But that's a part of the Debo conversation, right? Like, I'm defending Debo, but his health is a part of the is Debo worth the investment conversation. And the fact that it feels like he's constantly banged up when you need him, that's a part of this conversation too. I guess my pushback is I get frustrated when it's just like fixated on this one Super Bowl game and then acting like the rest of the season he didn't play well, or it's not like 2 weeks before in the NFC Championship game he was their second best offensive player after Christian McCaffrey, and then taking these flaws that we saw when he was playing at his best and now just extrapolating their value because he struggled against 2 excellent corners and a great defense.
I also think when you go to sign players, there's this perception that you're signing players based off of what they've done, when really you're trying to use what they've done and project what they're going to do. And that was kind of my issue back when they signed Debo, or, he was was asking to potentially be traded, and they had to make a decision on signing him or trading him. And I was always an advocate for trading him because yes, he had come off of this amazing year, but I think it was pretty clear that was going to be the best year of his career. That was almost impossible to duplicate. So yes, certainly if that's what you were going to get, or if you're paying based off of what he's done in the rears, yes, he was worth the money. But projecting what he was going to do going forward, his physical brand of football, he was much older than most receivers that came out in that same draft. So when you looked at those things and some weight issues, some hamstring things, to me, that added up to not paying him the top wide receiver money and being okay to moving on from him. The 49ers didn't see it that way, but here we are a couple years later, and it's like, all right, now a lot of people are seeing it like, man, I really wish we would have let him go. But I remember everybody hated me 2 years ago for suggesting that idea.
Well, I remember that too, because I remember we argued about it a little bit. The one thing I will say with Debo is I think there's a cultural value to paying him. In a lot of ways, the team relies on Debo's toughness, Debo's swagger, Debo's athletic arrogance. They rely on Trent and Debo. And so you can say what you want, but we do this song and dance with Debo every year. When he plays, we're told he's overrated. He's not that good. When he doesn't play, they're not winning because Debo's not on the field. This guy's not producing because Debo's not on the field. So we can't have it both ways. I think the biggest impact with Debo is the fact that this team rallies around Debo. He's the heart and soul culturally of this team. Like, why did they not have the swagger in their Super Bowl? Because Debo didn't have his swagger in the Super Bowl. Why did they have their most swagger in the Eagles game? Because guess which game the guy wore black and came in like he was going to do what he was going to do at Lincoln Financial Field, and he put on that show. That was Debo. So that's where I think Debo also plays into this, and that's also why when we're putting the Aiyuk delineation and we're saying where are they going to hard stop him, I think they'll try and hard stop him under Debo because there's a marketability to Debo that the owner will like when he's cutting the check that Aiyuk does not have. There's a culture to Debo that sets the culture for the entire team that Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch, these guys love and they rave about. And then, yeah, it's just Debo has a skill that's impossible to replicate. No matter how much you don't like Debo after the catch is a one-of-one entity. People get compared to it every year. And every year we see them in the NFL and we say that's not Debo after the catch. And there's a lot of other skills in the NFL, like route running, for example, which Brandon Aiyuk is exceptional at. You can approximate his route running with a lot of different guys. And with the modern NFL, you can put them in condensed splits. You can put them in bunches. You can put them in motion. Now you give them space and free releases where they might not be as gifted a route runner as Brandon Aiyuk, but you can get them open. You can't teach anybody to run with the football with the ball in their hands like Debo Samuel. That's one of one. And that's why they won't replace him.
Yeah, his greatest trait is he's a tone setter. And it's hard to get rid of tone setters because those guys are the guys that go, hey, guys, follow me. I'm playing at this level. You match me. And he's a tone setter for them. So he has a value that kind of goes beyond catches and yards and just football. I mean, I think in my mind.
I also think if the 49ers had a crystal ball and knew that they were going to get CMC just a few short months later, that maybe they wouldn't have pulled the trigger on that deal and they would have traded him.
I think that's
100%.
Fair.
And then if they knew like Aiyuk would just continue ascending like this.
Yeah, of course.
At that point, Ayuk's development track was probably still uncertain for them too, because that was his doghouse year.
Kinde says draft Utah safety Sione Vaki. Well, I know this. The Niners are working him out. They like him. They like Sione Vaki. Down the list, not a super, but I just had to throw it anyway. Sean Wilford said Larry needs to smoke some weed. Some weed. Do I need more of a head high or a body high? Should I go, it's California. I could probably just, I could go to the club. Do I go edibles? Do I, pre-rolls?
Is this indica or sativa?
Sativa? Do I want to, give me, I need more specifics than just smoke some weed is like something you said to somebody in like 1990. Now you gotta be like,
what is he to pull out his bong from under his waterbed? What are we talking about?
Yeah, now you got to be like, dude, you need a 3-foot bong with ice cubes in it and sativa with a.
You seem pretty informed on this topic. You might want to share.
I'm very informed on this topic, which is why Sean really doesn't know me all that well. Okay. What else?
Well, Sean, there's your answer, buddy.
There's your answer.
Not so subtle.
Sean, I think the answer is Larry's higher than you right now. No. That's not true. That's not true. I just was working with the kids. How could I be high? All right. Charlie writes, Charlie McElhannon says trade Brandon Aiyuk to the Jags for Josh Allen, player swap.
I swear, we've seen this like 3 times. No, I don't think it's the same person.
I swear it was Charlie the last time too, was it not?
Maybe it was.
Yeah, it's been all the same, Charlie.
Okay, sorry about that, Charlie. Well, we see you
should have gotten to him before. Poor guy.
We got this one. Okay, here we go. Saul Goodman. Good Saul Goodman. He says, who is your first round pick for the 49ers and why? Do you guys have a first round pick for the
Jordan
Niners?
Morgan. It's Morgan.
April. Talk to me the week before the draft in April.
I'm going
That's fair.
Rook Aurora.
Just because you like to say his name. You just like to
I
say his
know.
name, Larry.
I
That has
know.
nothing to do with anything.
No, I love Rook Aurora. The guy is 6'4", 295. He worked out amazing at the combine. He's a freak of nature. He's super smart. He's a vocal leader. He was all ACC. He's like academic all ACC. I mean, this is a phenomenal prospect. And to me, as we get closer to the draft, he'll probably be late first round pick, and that's where the Niners sit late in the first round. I like Rook or Rororo.
If we're
Plus, I
just
want
saying
Greg
like
Papa to
dream,
have to say it. What's that?
if we're just saying okay, that's a
No,
good
I like.
point.
I also
I'm
want.
now
I
all
want
of
a
a sudden
big
with you
time.
because who
I want a
wouldn't
big
find
time
it annoying to
defensive
hear Greg Papa say that name 5 times a game?
That'd be awesome. Be awesome.
It would be great. But I guess like I don't
I
have
really
like
believe
a
in that
draft
kid
pick
though.
necessarily yet, and part of it is because I'm not like so deep yet in the draft, and then part of it is it's really hard to tell who's going to really go at 31. This isn't like 8 where we have a good idea at least of who the first 7 players in the draft or who the top 10 best players in the draft are. So it's really hard to tell who's going to be available at 31. But like a dream, like just dream draft scenario for me would be I'm now newly introduced to this idea that Brandon Aiyuk can be traded for a top 15 pick. So like a dream scenario for me would be Brandon Aiyuk gets traded for a top 15 pick. Quarterbacks and these tackles go early. All of a sudden you're sitting there at 11, 12, 13, 14, somewhere in there. And Dallas Turner or Jared Verse have just fallen. And they're just sitting right there. And John Lynch is like ready to, go pounce. Like that would just be a dream scenario. Or maybe one of the tackles that way, like probably not Joe Alt, but maybe one of the other guys. But definitely like a special edge player, because I think Dallas Turner is a special edge player. I just think it's the weirdness of this draft. So he's getting pushed down. It's like Micah Parsons in 2021. Not saying he's Micah Parsons, just saying like the one talented defensive player just getting pushed down because of all the offense. I think that would be like a dream. Like if I could make it happen in my dreams, that would be it.
Well, to me, it's like, if you could find the next badass defensive tackle pass rusher,
okay, yeah,
and add them to this group with Leonard Floyd, Nick Bosa, the 2 kids they just signed, and Javon Hargrave, I'll take my chances with that front line. I was so disappointed, guys. I don't know how you guys felt. We didn't talk that much about it, but to me, if there's one thing that was just really kind of left me with a bad taste in my mouth is how mediocre the 49er defensive line. I mean, they made this the focus of their freaking team, and they were thoroughly mediocre. They got pushed around by Detroit's offensive line. They didn't get a lot of heat on Green Bay's quarterback. They didn't get enough heat on Mahomes when it mattered. I just, to me, the Niners, considering their stated goal is to have a dominant defensive line, and we must have a dominant defensive line. They poured all their assets into it. They love their coach. They love their fucking scheme. They love their players. They loved all these guys, and they did shit. They did absolutely nothing. So to me, if there's one area that makes me go, hey, Niners, you were abysmal. I don't want to hear anybody say jack about Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy played his ass off. What about that defensive line that is supposedly awesome? What about Chris Kasarik and his we're constantly tipping our cap to Chris Kasarik. Where was that line? Where they're lollygagging through the Lions game and not really making that much of an impact and getting pushed around in short yardage all year long and not really ever stopping the run. To me, the Niner D-line needs a revamping, and they're not going to change the scheme, and they're not going to change the coordinator, and they just moved out Armstead. I think they need a big-time, a Chris Jones type tackle. Now, there's a lot of freaking great tackles in this draft. Go find Chris Jones. I think it might be this Aurora kid because he moves amazing at 295. But they got to find that interior bad hombre because Hargrave ain't it. And these guys, I'm hoping Collins and Elliott are it. But come on, those are not superstar players. Those are complimentary type players. They need their alpha on the D line inside, and that's who I want to take at 31, in my mind. So maybe I'm being a little too harsh to the
Chris
Niner
Jones was
D-line.
taken at what, 34, 35?
Yeah.
To be
Yeah.
fair, Chris Jones was, I think, the number 2 recruit when he came out of high school. He just went to Mississippi State, was a little under the radar. Little effort issues, I think, at Mississippi State, if I remember.
I'll tell you, just
Play a little high.
by
Not that kind
association alone, I would be interested in the. I think there's a D tackle in this draft from Jaden Crumedy from Mississippi State. I think I might take an extra look at him. I mean, you had Simmons, who's
Jeff
monster,
Simmons,
Chris
right,
Jones,
Chris Jones.
who's monster. I mean, some of the greatest defensive tackles we've seen in the last 15 years are coming out of Starkville. It's like you might want to go check who's coming out this year. And that
Montez
kid Crumedy,
Sweat came out of Mississippi State, right?
right. I mean, they produce some amazing defensive players. The defensive player of the year in the SEC is the linebacker from Mississippi State, who's projected to go like late. Nathaniel Watson. He was the defensive. He's 6'2", 233, grad student from Mississippi State. He was the SEC Defensive Player of the Year. The mock draft has him going around 200. That's late. That's late on day 3. So you may want to take a look at some of these Mississippi State kids. Not to mention that, didn't you guys see the Commanders this year and Emmanuel Forbes? He was pretty damn good. I don't know if you know, he's skinny, but he's pretty damn good. All right. Dazza says Vish for $28 million a year. The effort isn't there. Health's an issue. And he had 900 yards and 7 touchdowns. He's not AJ Brown, CeeDee Lamb, JJ, etc. Goes beyond the Super Bowl.
This is like the Cam Newton argument when they used to put up his passing stats and he would have 800 yards and 15 touchdowns rushing. But they're like, oh, let's not include the 15 touchdowns. You got to include that with Debo. He had 12 touchdowns in 15 games. I'm not telling you he's AJ Brown, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson. And you're right. The health is an issue. And sometimes the effort isn't there. But we can't just turn it into he doesn't have any value. And yes, the $28 million a year is steep, but even with the $28 million, it's just, I feel like they're stuck. That's kind of the contract they gave him.
A couple others here. We got this one. You all need to do a draft night live stream. Oh God, dude, anybody, I'll be all over the draft.
Never.
I'm sure Jesse, Vish will all be over all of the draft. Maybe we can hook it up.
Don't you love like watching the draft? Like I love watching the draft. I love flipping between ESPN and NFL Network. There's Marvin 49, who for like the last 13 years has put the entire Niners draft out with like every single reaction for every single pick. So that's like my favorite like Sunday post-draft tradition, because sometimes I'll miss the CBS reaction or I'll miss the NFL Network reaction. So he makes sure to get all of that. I love watching the draft. Like I love when they get David Shaw on and Charles Davis on. I used to love Gruden in the draft. I like Louis Riddick in the draft. I liked Mayock. Kuiper's, he's the GOAT of the draft. And for every bad take he has an occasional good take too. So I love watching it. I wouldn't want to stream during it because I love listening to those guys. I love the hype. I love the way every pick, you think that whatever team has just changed their franchise with every pick. It's awesome.
Now we got Frank Tom Ocean, who's pissing me off. He says, the Big Show is the third best show of the week. Y'all rock.
That's tough.
Tom.
Well, you didn't exactly sell it with like the strongest endorsement when we started. You're like, yeah, this just might be one of the, I was like, wow, geez, that was like the most, you gave yourself the most outs ever when talking about the show and how much you liked it, allegedly.
Well,
Possibly.
You know what? I do love the show, but it's like you never want to make anybody feel bad. It's a different vibe. I like this vibe because this vibe is informative. It could be argumentative. It could be combative. And I think all those kinds of things are vital to good streaming. There's other streams I do that, Raj is a very happy, friendly guy. It's a different vibe. When I'm doing it with my son and we're taking calls, that's a kind of a different vibe. So it's like I like different vibes, but to me, this is my favorite as far as content, combativeness, and just we're chopping it up the way
Chopping
three
it
guys would chop it up in a bar, as far as I'm concerned. So
Mhm.
I enjoy it. We got this one from V.O. Walker. Trade up for Byron Murphy. Byron Murphy, tremendous pass rusher for Texas. I mean, there's no question. He can really get after the passer. All right, couple more before I run
I
out
like
of
that
topic.
too. Like if we're throwing, we can throw his name with Dallas Turner, and maybe not Dallas Turner and Jared Verse, but right under there.
Byron
Be
Murphy's
awesome. Yeah.
he's big time. Ray went to Atlanta. How concerned are you guys about the return game? Who would you like to see be the returner this year? Let me grab one thing. Give me 30 seconds.
God, I haven't even thought about.
Okay, I got you. I want Debo to return
That
kicks.
was,
Like, I want that to
that's
continue.
right when I
Right.
said I haven't thought about Debo was the end. I agree. Yes.
Right.
Yeah,
like I want
agree.
that. Like that's
Wholeheartedly.
just another way to get the ball in his hands. I want that to
I agree.
continue. And
I
then
agree.
punts, they can get somebody out there to fair catch a few punts. Trent Taylor did it for years reliably.
Hunter Renfro, he's available. He's a little white guy. Maybe he could be the one.
I was actually thinking of him for this exact reason, and then Mo Sanu as well, right?
I love it. Yeah, Debo, that's the one. I agree with you, Debo. And when did that start? It started against Green Bay in the divisional game a couple years ago, right? The really cold game. They started plugging him in there, and he was really dynamic and flipped the field multiple times.
He did that by choice in that game because they had the
Mhm.
historically bad special teams, and they were like, I feel like it was also like an intimidation, like we're putting Debo back here and he's gonna break it, like we're scaring your bad special teams. But then they really went to it this year in the playoffs and stuff, and I thought it was just like an additional way to be like, okay, it's a close game. Debo is one of these players that can break any play with the ball in his hands. Let's just give him one more chance at breaking a certain play. So I think that's why it kind of makes sense. I saw that too. I think it kind of makes sense. But but I was thinking like Jesse, like to sign a guy. I mean he got decent money from Green Bay to return, but Keyshawn Nixon's a stud returner. He had a big return versus the Niners, all pro returner. And he's a decent nickel corner. Like, he's not bad. That was a guy I was thinking maybe they could sign to fit two roles, but I wasn't, like, too enthused by it. And yeah, he didn't get money that was like, okay, man, I wish the Niners signed him.
Yeah, most certainly. Oh, can you not hear us? Can you hear us? Can you hear us?
No, I got you.
How was your little break?
Well, I had to get some more water, man. I've been
Water.
out in the field playing with the kids, and I'm drinking out of my Coke glass that my daughter got me, but I ran out of water, and I'm sitting there going, I'm kind of dry mouthed over here.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on a second. Ross says Jesse hates Debo but wants him. What? Why? I just have a question. This is just
Isn't
an
he
open
your favorite
question.
player?
He is my favorite player. I mean, up until I had this sign, like I have a signed Debo picture that's now right over here that I had right here for years. But why is it like if you're critical of a player or you're willing to like listen to offers for a player that you just automatically hate them? Like, can we decipher the difference between like hate and just being critical or being open that maybe they're not the best player in the league? Is it automatically I have to say, hey, you know what? Every time we talk about X player, they're the best player in the world at their position because they wear red and gold. Is that the only standard?
Do you guys
because
hate?
If you don't, you're a hater. Is that how that works?
I mean, do you guys hate any player? Really?
Oh, no. I mean,
is there any player that you're like really don't like? I mean, like on the Niners,
unless like the ones that are just like bad, like people in terms of like they've had an instance in their past that it feels kind of icky at this point rooting for them. I don't know. Like the only players I've ever hated in my lifetime were like I've like had a strong, passionate dislike for Tom Brady in different various years. I've hated Richard Sherman in different various years. There's been like a few, but I don't know of like hate, man. Hate's such a
I don't hate any players, but I hate guys who dog it. I hate guys who don't bring it. That bothers me.
See, I don't mind that because I think
you don't mind guys that dog it?
Well, look, I think of it as us in the workplace. Not every single person in corporate America is given every single day their 100% all. That's just the reality of it. And I'm still friends with people that don't work as hard. Now, you want them to work hard, but like as long as they're getting their job done and they're getting their paycheck, like sometimes for people, that's all that's important. And I think sometimes people look at football and they think like, I put it all on the line when I was 7 years old and 8 years old, and mom was giving me orange pieces after the game. And that's great. But it's really different when it's your profession and all of that. And I totally get it if a guy is just like, yeah, dude. Yeah, I agree with the chat, by the way, Krug. After hearing that early statement, now I understand why the water was so necessary for you, okay? But going back, like, I get
I
it.
am
I get it why.
absolutely sober right now. I am absolutely sober. Do I need to
Right
get
now,
close?
yeah.
Do I need to
Keywords.
get closer to the camera?
Yeah, listen, we need you to take a field sobriety test real quick.
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know if I could pass a field sobriety test normally. I was trying to watch. No, seriously. Today I'm the pitching coach for this team. I'm trying to walk off 60 feet 6 inches, which is kind of stupid because the mound's 55 feet away. And so I'm doing it.
You're
I'm
having
trying
trouble walking in a straight line, Krug?
I'm having a hard time walking in a straight line. I'm like
Uh-oh.
falling over as I'm putting my feet one in front of each other.
Krug, I
And
hope
the
somebody
coach is
took
like,
your
"You all right,
keys."
bro?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm all right. I'm all right."
Did he take your keys?
No, they didn't take my keys.
Oh,
Larry, don't move your head. Just with your eyes. Follow my finger. Follow
Okay.
my finger.
that is really creepy because you're like right on my eyesight.
Look, does it
like,
I look
right
like
here,
E.T.,
yeah.
huh? It's like
Yeah.
E.T. E.T. phone home.
Oh man. Okay. What did you guys? Who do you guys want returning?
I said we
Debo.
both said Debo kicks, and then we just said you can put anybody out there to fair catch
We said sign
punts.
Hunter Renfro because he's a small white guy. He'd be
We
great
said Mo
to
Sanu
fair
has
catch
fair caught
punts.
punts for this team before. We said Trent Taylor caught fair caught punts for 2 years.
But you're cool with Ray moving on.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Who told me in the locker room? I said, Ray, how do you get ready for the game? And he said, well, I go out on the field, I do my stretching, and then I come back in here and I listen to 50 Cent High all the time. So there you go. That was his song of choice.
The theme of the show.
Okay. I'll give you my
all the
prediction.
time.
I'll give you my
Yes.
prediction on who I
Which
think inevitably
Kind of makes you
replaces him.
wonder if Ray was high some of the time.
So only some.
When you have to listen to High all the time, is it possible that you could be high some of the time? Anyway, I would come by his locker and I would start throwing some of the lyrics from that song, as only a 54-year-old white guy can do, and he would always laugh. As I'm sitting there, I'm reciting High all the time lyrics to Ray McCloud. Go ahead, Bish. I interrupted.
Oh
you.
no, I was just gonna say
something...
I think Ronnie Bell probably is gonna just take his role 1-for-1. I think that's part of why they let him walk, because he's so cheap and capable of doing it. But I'm not gonna lie, guys. I think it might just be the trauma of him wearing 10, but the way he fielded punts the entire season was when Ray McCloud was hurt and all of that was not convincing to me. Maybe he'll improve this offseason, but I don't necessarily love the idea of Ronnie Bell being that guy for the entire season.
I'm okay with them moving on from Ray because I just didn't feel like Ray did the job. He wasn't like a difference maker. He was okay. And lots of people blamed him on the Super Bowl thing. It's like, dude, he probably should have just fell on the ball. But I mean, he had like a nanosecond to think about it, and it wasn't his fault that the ball hit Luter's heel. And he did the right thing by going after it, of course, but he should have just fell on it.
You haven't had a dynamic guy for a while back there.
Right. It'd be nice to have I think
game
of the most
changer.
dynamic return guys ever. I think of Devin Hester, and I think of the guy from Michigan who played for Green Bay, Desmond Howard. Remember how great Desmond Howard was?
I think.
What about
I think of those
Dante
two,
Hall?
Josh Cribbs, excuse me, Dante Hall,
yeah.
Jacoby
Ted
Jones,
Ginn.
Ted.
Ted
There we
Ginn.
go. That was where I was gonna get Teddy Ginn.
Ted Ginn was explosive. He was incredibly fast.
I still remember him returning the opening kickoff of the national championship game back for a touchdown and then spraining his ankle promptly, and Florida ran him over.
We haven't talked about the quarterback, but the quarterback got married, and then his backup took off. And I'm cool with that because I'm not a Sam Darnold guy, and I never really was, and I didn't think to me it's amazing. It's amazing that he could do what he did this year and get a $5 million, basically get your salary doubled from $5 million to $10 million. I mean, he played one game and he was kind of mediocre in that one game. So I don't know. But who would you like to see? Because this is an interesting thing. How should the Niners quarterback room come down? We know Brandon Allen's there. We know Purdy's there. Do you want that third string guy to be a young veteran and Allen to be the 3? Or do you want that guy to be a rookie and Allen to be the 2? And if so, is there a rookie that intrigues you at all at quarterback?
You want to go, Jesse?
I haven't dug into the rookie quarterbacks a ton yet. Vish and I actually just talked about this the other day, but man, I mean, I would prefer a veteran, and I would prefer that Allen's not the number 2 guy. So whether that's it doesn't have to be Carson Wentz. Obviously, Carson Wentz probably is not going to be the guy, but I don't know. Somebody that's proven they can win in this league. Somebody threw out in my chat the other day, Tannehill, like that. Sure. If you could get somebody like that on the cheap, I'm totally fine. But somebody that's proven they can actually win games in this league, if they have to start for a couple games, would be nice. I don't think Allen's that guy. Certainly a rookie's not that guy. It doesn't mean they can't win games, but you haven't seen it. So I would like to get somebody that's played a little bit and can win games in case Purdy is not healthy for a few.
Okay, so I'm the Tannehill thing is very intriguing to me. That kind of changed my perspective on this because I was all in on the rookie. I still kind of am because I think Tannehill will just be money that I wouldn't want to dole out to him, some amount of guaranteed money. So I say go Brandon Allen as a rookie. Guys, I'm sick of the 49ers spending guaranteed money on a backup quarterback for 1 year. They did it for Nate Sudfeld. He got $2 million for no reason, fully guaranteed. And Sam Darnold got $3.5 million fully guaranteed. I think that Brandon Allen can be a functional backup for a season, and they can draft a late round quarterback and develop him to be their probable backup. And, maybe they draft another starter at the late round at quarterbacks. Not likely. Brock Purdy was obviously one of one situation, not likely to happen again. But now I think you can go through the process of finding what you originally expected Brock Purdy to be when you drafted him in the 7th round, which was hopefully a guy that can develop into your roster and make it as a backup. He turned out to be way, way, way beyond that. But I think now you take a chance to find a guy, develop him for a year. You can have Allen, and then the next year you have the cheapest quarterback room in NFL history, 2 late round quarterbacks. I mean, that's so ideal, but that would be like a dream scenario.
Yeah, and shout out, it was Cosmo. I should have remembered. He was actually joking, giving he was kind of joking, giving coach some crap, but I was like, no, that's actually a really good idea.
It's a great idea.
I would love to have Tannehill, yeah.
Tannehill's
he would be like what, $7.5 million looking at Flacco's deal, like Tannehill Flacco, that deal got to be close, right?
Yeah, I would imagine.
I mean, here's my question. If Brock Purdy went down for 5 weeks and Brandon Allen started,
disaster.
Would it be a disaster? Would they go 0 for 5? They would.
I don't know if they'd go 0 for 5. It depends. I don't know who they're playing in those games, but I'd probably bet them losing 3 of the 5, and then there goes your number 1 seed.
So Steven S52 or 552. What is it?
No.
He says Zach Wilson.
No.
Jake Browning didn't give you guys a little bit of, hey, Brandon Allen might have
No,
something?
absolutely not. No.
So wait, Jesse, you're going to say no on Zach Wilson for sure.
Yeah, I can't. No
matter the price.
I can't do it. Nope, I don't care. I don't want him here.
What about the Jake Browning being actually like fairly decent, not fairly decent, but backup worthy out of nowhere last year? Like that's where I kind of want to play the Brandon Allen odds. Like he's been in the league a long time. The Niners like seem to like Brandon Allen, right? Like they seem to like what Brandon Allen's constantly
Jake Browning was a good
doing.
quarterback in college, at least. I mean, I don't remember Brandon Allen from anybody in college. So at least Jake Browning was like a name that I remember. I'm like, I remember he was good in college.
John Ross.
For sure.
Someone said Cam Curl signing with the Rams. Is that true?
Wait, what?
Great.
Probably true.
Yep, it is true. 2-year deal, $13 million.
Wow,
Damn,
the Rams are killing it on paper in free agency. We'll see how it turns out, actually.
Okay,
Yeah.
here's my thought on the quarterback thing. You got to have probably the priorities got to be, Brock's going to play. You got to have somebody that you can win with in the 5 weeks that Brock's not there if Brock were to get hurt. Otherwise, there's potential that you're going to lose this season on a 5-week injury to your starting quarterback, and you can't let that happen. So I don't know. There's a lot of people that a lot of talk is that they like Michael Pratt from Tulane, but he's probably going to go in like the 3rd or 4th round. That's way too early. The guy who I'm intrigued by is Joe Milton from Tennessee, but he's obviously super raw, but the tools are off the charts. He's also probably going to go in the 4th or 5th round. Then there's Jordan Travis, Sam Hartman, Keaton Slovis, Devin Leary, Carter Bradley. I kind of like Austin Reed. It's not a great class. So to me, if I could trade for a Zach Wilson or Davis Mills, heck, if I could trade for Justin Fields, I would trade for a young quarterback and have him there. Then just roll the dice on health, right? You're going to lose another Super Bowl year while you've got this loaded roster because you don't have a quarterback. I don't know, guys. I don't to me, I don't love Tannehill either. He's 35, but I was hoping for Gardner Minshew maybe, but he wound up going to Vegas.
I know a guy that could be available around the part of the season in case Purdy gets hurt. He might remain unemployed till that time. You might not have his services available week 1, but 2 through 17, he could be wide open.
Don't you do it. Don't you do it.
Oh,
Jimmy
you
Garoppolo.
said it was Garoppolo, yeah.
Jimmy G. I don't think Shanahan can stomach that.
He would also just be the worst possible backup, right? Because you would feel like you're a game away from the starter with his injury history, even with him as a backup, or a game away from the 3rd string, excuse me.
Would you do this? Jaden says trade a 5th for Fields.
No.
Don't like
Fields and Shanahan would be a disaster.
Unless they're going to make Fields their Taysom Hill. And I think that's disrespectful to Justin Fields.
That would be super disrespectful. Yeah, absolutely not.
Wow. Well, I don't know. So you would do the veteran or the rookie?
Yeah,
I would. Yeah, but like the veteran, the problem is, Krug, I just don't want to give I'm so sick of them giving these guys to be a backup quarterback that frankly aren't even that good guaranteed money, right? They do this thing where they give Nate Sudfeld guaranteed money. Either go get a real backup, like a guy, because you're not doing anything with Sudfeld and his guaranteed money if he has to play anyway. So go get a real backup. I guess they kind of did that with Darnold. Although I guess I also think Darnold is a little bit worse than they do. They rely on Darnold's traits. I'm going by Darnold's production.
Tannehill's a guy.
Tannehill would be a guy, but I see the $7.5 million for Flacco. And I'm looking at this roster and we're talking about cutting costs at every possible thing. Those pennies matter. And I would love for them to just get super young and cheap, ×2 at quarterback.
It's a tough call. Alive Insurance says Larry wants Michael Penix. I think Michael Penix is the best quarterback in the draft. If he's the best quarterback in the draft and he's there at 31, would you take him? If
he's the best quarterback.
If Michael Penix is the best quarterback in the draft and I'm right, would you take him at 31?
And I knew that he was. Yeah, of course I would say that.
If you knew that he was the best quarterback in this draft, but you don't know how good, the draft is.
Right. But you mean best quarterback in the draft, meaning how good is the best quarterback in this draft going to become? Because the best quarterback in this draft could be a career backup, right? And he's still the best quarterback from the draft.
Yeah, we don't know. That makes it tough.
Yeah. We don't know. I'm saying I think Penix is going to be really, really good.
I'll tell you this. I loved watching Penix. I couldn't stop ranting and raving about some of the wow throws that he made. I give me a couple more weeks and I'll have an answer. Vish knows this. I always wait until right before the draft. I'll go and I'll watch all 22 on all of them. I'll watch 3 or 4 games. I'll have a very in-depth breakdown. So give me a couple weeks before I will just say, watching him live, I thoroughly enjoyed watching him play. I thought he made the most accurate big time throws out of all of the guys consistently. But I also think that he's clunky in the pocket sometimes. So, but that's just off of watching a game and enjoying it. Give me a couple weeks. I'll break them all down and I'll have a real opinion on where I think Penix stands. But
Yeah.
if I am going off of your opinion and he's the best guy in the draft at 31, man, that's tough because you don't know, to your point, you don't know what that ceiling is. And I don't know, man. God, I'd say no, I guess, but that's tough.
Yeah,
Guy's got a gun, man.
I'm saying no as well. He's got a gun. He's good. He throws the ball very,
He does
very
have a
well.
hose.
But you already have a good quarterback, and you already have one for cheap. The thing with Penix, there's two things that scares me besides the injuries. One, Jesse talked about, he's kind of clunky in the pocket. He just doesn't deal with bodies around him as well as you would like when you're looking at, like, he's got a Geno Smith quality to him where when the pocket's clean, he can throw it and he can just throw strikes everywhere. And then when you start having guys flash around him in his space, it's a little bit more difficult. And then here's my real question with Penix, Larry, and I want to hear what your thoughts are on this or why like this is okay for you. I think like in the modern NFL for a quarterback, like one of the big things has become, and this is something Brock Purdy has in spades, that's like underrated athletic and underrated physical skills, is to be able to shuffle around and throw from different platforms from different angles, right? And the thing with Penix that's kind of like odd is that for a guy with superior arm talent, he doesn't really throw the ball too accurately when his feet aren't set. And so like those are the two things that I look at Penix, and those are enough concerns for me where I look at, you already have Brock Purdy. He's good. You know he's good. And he's cheap. I wouldn't even risk with Penix at 31. I would just continue.
He was amazing. He was amazing against Utah. If you saw that game where he was getting rushed and he was making back shoulder throws, and I just think he's super special. And I don't believe he'll be there at 31, but man, if he is there at 31, man, that's a tough moment for me, because how do you pass up on Michael Penix when you could probably do the opposite of what you did with Trey Lance in a year if you're just patient? You got the 31st pick overall. You play this guy in the preseason, you show him everybody what he's got, and then you trade him for 3 number ones. I don't know. I'm a big Penix believer, but okay. So
I want to clarify something, because Tita brought up a really good point. He said, "Hey, he's a lefty. Maybe he looks like he's clunky, but he's not." Let me clarify. He's clunky in a muddy pocket.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he's awful mechanically or he doesn't have clean footwork in a clean pocket, but when he has people around him, it looks off. There's something off about it.
The operation is as smooth as it gets for anybody. When he has clean pocket space, he throws rockets, he throws strikes. He looks clunky when people are around him as an athlete, and that then goes into when he doesn't have his feet set, his accuracy goes a little bit. Maybe clunky is a little bit of a harsh adjective, but I know exactly what you're talking about, Jesse.
Stark says, Larry, this Penix crush has to stop. Draft him for 2 first-rounders in 2025. Just ridiculous. All right.
Starks is done with that.
Starks, don't get me going, Starks. You saw what happened the other day.
But you think Krug for sure he's gone before 31?
Yeah,
he'll pass all the medicals. He'll pass all of those types of things.
You know what's interesting? Dave Softy Mahler's my buddy, and he does the pregame for UW. And I asked him, I said, Dave, dude, I cannot believe this kid is thought of as a second-round pick. And he's like, he's operated behind such a great offensive line that you're not seeing, really a reality situation with him. And that is in a lot of ways what happened with Zach Wilson. He operated behind an amazing offensive line. And in reality, in the NFL, muddy pocket is the pocket that you will be playing in.
Yeah, but it's not always the case, though, right? CJ Stroud, the protection at Ohio State was immaculate his last year, and he showed he could play with people around him as good as anybody.
Yeah, it's just you never know how a guy's going to react when there's bodies flying around. We got this one from Maritime Wake Gal. Debo is only great for a gimmicky offense. He's a crutch for Kyle Shanahan that must be taken away. We need a real downfield passing offense to win the Super Bowl. I don't know about that.
It's interesting.
Do you guys agree with that? That he's just a gimmick?
I don't think he's a gimmick, but I do think he was a better fit for an offense that didn't have CMC and had Jimmy G at quarterback.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't think he's a
Go ahead.
gimmick either, but I do think that he's unique. And so it's easy to call him a gimmick for sure.
I think there is some validity there, though. Like, I'm with both of you guys. Gimmick is definitely way too harsh to describe him. But I do think that the usage of Debo has gotten a little bit stale. And I think that's where his game hasn't evolved either. And I think that's the part of Debo that's not being talked about. Like, he's not been asked to do anything different really since 2019, other than now he lines up in the backfield. But he's basically same splits, same routes. All of those kinds of stuff is very similar with Debo because of he's been consistently doing the same things. He hasn't been, in my opinion, asked to evolve, and he hasn't evolved. So I think he's got a point where like Shanahan and Debo, like that usage is maybe a little bit like stale, where Debo needs to maybe expand his game a little bit more, and Shanahan maybe needs to ask Debo to do more things. Or maybe this is all Debo is fully capable of, and Shanahan's just fully maximizing that too.
A couple more. We got Frank Tom Ocean says, "Don't get mad at me, Larry. Love y'all," because he said we were the third best show. KP Chahal says, "Hey, Larry." This is all caps. I mean, this is not even a super, but I just saw all caps and I thought it needed to be addressed. "Hey, Larry, Haberman doubted my source. I told you, Niners are shopping both wide receivers. They only going to keep one. Broncos wanted a first, a second, and Aiyuk for Surtain."
The first and the second and Aiyuk for Surtain. Interesting.
I don't know.
Yeah,
if I
no
would
wonder
give
it didn't get done.
Yeah. Jeff says, "Larry, need a mock draft update. Graham Barton, by the way." I'm worried that Graham Barton's a guard, and if you're drafting a guard at the end of the first round, what if he tops out at left guard or right guard? That's going to look bad. I mean, they drafted McGlinchey 9th, thinking they were getting a left tackle. They got a right tackle. It wasn't worth the 9th pick in the draft. So I'm a little worried about taking anybody who's not a left tackle at the end of the draft. All right, last question before we jet. We're 2 hours and 5 minutes in.
Cosmo.
My board says we have almost 2,000 people hanging.
Is Cosmo the person that always goes, Krug is about to add 2 more topics?
Yeah. Here it comes.
This is the last.
Come on, Cosmo. This is when you shine, bud.
The last goddamn topic, Cosmo. All right. All right. And Muff D says, "Larry, we need a guard. LOL. Thank you, Muff."
He's not wrong, though. Technically, a guard wouldn't be bad at this point, right? Like, we wouldn't mind a right guard.
When I need my insights, I listen to Muff. I'm a big fan of Muff. Muff says Burford isn't close to McKivitz. LOL. That's just Muff.
He wasn't close to McKivitz on the play that Chris Jones split the two of them. I'll tell you that.
That's Muff being Muff. And we got another one from Muff. Ha, 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 ha. There you go. It's a great name, Muff. Stay with it. All right, here we go. Last question of the live stream, and I do mean it. Who's done great in free agency? Whose free agent moves make you go, uh-oh, I don't like that? And to me, I'll throw out a few options for you. Detroit got DJ Reader to add to Aiden Hutchinson up front to stretch out that line. That to me is a major get. They also got a couple young DBs, I believe. Packers got Xavier McKinney and Josh Jacobs. That's pretty damn good.
Mm-hmm.
The Commanders, my God, I did a video on this because I couldn't believe it. The Commanders got like a whole new team. Now, the Commanders' offseason is going to be predicated on who they pick number 2. They pick the right quarterback, it's going to be a good year. They pick the wrong quarterback, it'll be a bad year. But they got Nick Allegretti, my good buddy, Tyler Biadasz or whatever from Dallas. The center. Biadasz. He's pretty good. Bobby Wagner, Austin Eckler, Dorrance Armstrong, Dante Fowler, Marcus Mariota, Zach Ertz, really underrated signing in Frankie Louvu, Jeremy Chin, who I love, Cleveland Farrell, Brandon McManus. And they re-signed Jamison Crowder and Jeremy Reeves, a couple of their own guys. Dude, Adam Peters, my God. He's kicking ass. The Ravens got Derrick Henry. That's pretty damn good when you think about what they already have, and they franchised Matabuke and got a long-term deal done with him. When I say, the free agent winner so far, who do you guys think of? And who steps up in your mind?
I'll give you two. I like Green Bay and the Rams. And I hate doing free agent winners and losers because, like I said at the beginning of the show, 90% of the time, the best winners in free agency are the teams that didn't do the deal, right? It's the team that let the guy walk and didn't give him that contract. It's not just that the team signed a player and it was a lot of money, it was a bad contract. It's also we're complimenting the right moves of letting guys walk. But if we're going just off of who's signing and we're going off of, okay, what is the practicality of their signing? I think Josh Jacobs was a home run signing. I like Josh Jacobs to Green Bay. I think that's a better signing than Saquon to the Eagles. I think that Josh Jacobs will be more impactful for Green Bay than Saquon will be to the Eagles. And I think Xavier McKinney is just straight up an upgrade from Darnell Savage. They got better. So I think the Packers had a really strong free agency with those two signings. And then Green Bay, the Rams, Jonah Jackson's a stud guard. When you look at how mean they are up front now with Steve Avila, Kevin Dotson, Jonah Jackson, this is back when McVay had Roger Saffold. They signed him in 2018, Roger Saffold to play right guard, or 2017, excuse me. This is that kind of situation with Jonah Jackson. They got bigger, meaner with their offensive line. Darius Williams is an underrated player for them to bring back. He is a very solid corner. Cameron Curl, obviously now, very good player. So I like what the Rams have done. I think that they're going to have a nice team around Stafford and Puka. And I think that I actually think that the dynamics of their matchup with the 49ers, I don't know if they're going to change. I don't know if this Rams team is better than the other Rams teams that have played them, but I think this Rams team is now more competitive against the 49ers because they had a real size issue against the 49ers for so long. Houston's another one I would throw in there, but I don't know what they're going to do at defensive tackle. So until they do something there, I can't put them there. But with the Rams, they've had a size issue with the 49ers for so long, and now they're bigger. With what they did at defensive tackle last year, the rookie, I'm blanking on his name. Was it Kobe Turner? Yeah. Kobe Turner.
And you mentioned Avila.
Yeah.
Don't they have three? Aren't those three guys all guards?
Yeah, they're all guards. I think.
So who's going to play center?
Exactly. I think one of them will kick to play center.
Maybe Avila, because Avila's a monster, man.
He's it's just so big up front. And they had such issues with the Niners' size for so long. And when you lose Eric Armstead, you're losing size. And as good as Malik Collins and Javon Hargrave are, they're more undersized compared to Eric Armstead. And so that's where, Smith could be right. But I think the Rams now have a better chance in this matchup than they've had in years past because they'll match up better in the lines of scrimmages. So, yeah, they would be my other one, unfortunately.
Jesse, who do you got?
No, I think both. I think those are both great options. I'll give you two more just because I think obviously Kansas City hasn't gotten worse. In fact, they've signed everybody that they should have, and then they just got Hollywood Brown, but they're in the AFC. And so I'm looking at how this impacts the 49ers. Kansas City's a team that you worry about in the Super Bowl, but the NFC was one of the easiest conferences ever that I can remember in a long, long time. And everybody seems to be closing the gap. All the teams that you are worried about closing the gap, the Rams in division, you look at, although stay tuned on them, by the way, Rams in the division, you've got the Lions, you've got Green Bay, you've got Philly, who everybody thought was kind of left for the dead, but you look at what they've done. So I'll go with Detroit and Philly. I mean, Philly has done a phenomenal job. They went and got Huff, another really good pass rusher. Now, that tells me there's a possibility that they move on from maybe Reddick, who was looking to try to get dealt potentially. But if not, and they just added him and they've got three really good pass rushers on the edge again, it's like, well, that defensive line's as great as it's ever been potentially. And then you see Barkley goes there. Gardner Johnson went there. I mean, they've done a really good job. And then the Lions, their issues were pretty much all defensive. And they just got Reeder up the middle. They went and got two corners. Probably going to go get a pass rusher through the draft or what have you. The Lions have closed the gap as well. So, I mean, we talked about four teams in the NFC. Vish gave two. I gave the other two. And I think all four have done good. And then the biggest thing really for Philly was the fact that they replaced both their coordinators and upgraded in a big way there. So that's the real big win for them. And then you add all the weapons, like, okay, well, they've done a pretty good job.
Cox and Kelsey gone though. That's the one L they took. That's like,
yes, but here's the one thing that people are forgetting. Okay, Kelsey's great. I'm not going to take anything away from him, but they drafted a center, arguably the best center in the draft, Cam Jurgens in the 2021 draft.
Year before they drafted arguably the best center in Landon
Exactly.
Dickerson. You're right.
Exactly.
But I think what they're missing from those two players is a cultural issue. Like I think the linchpin in Philadelphia with this Howie Roseman era is that Andy Reid drafted one of them, right? He drafted Brandon Graham on his way out. Brandon Graham was a bust for 2 years. He turned out to be a long-standing stud. Lane Johnson, long-standing stud. You take the third tackle in a draft where 2 tackles go in the first 3 picks and you have by far the best player, that's robbing a bank. And then Fletcher Cox was a stud from day one. He fell to them. Another Mississippi State defensive tackle, Krug. Add to Jeff Simmons. Add to who did we mention else? Or Chris Jones. There you go. There's the third name, Fletcher Cox. And then they had Jason Kelsey, who was a rob the bank pick. I think they relied on those 4 players being so consistent, their leadership. I know what you're saying. Jalen Carter is as good as anybody I've seen, but that personality issue with Jalen Carter, I wonder if when things go wrong, like Fletcher Cox was such a consistent soundboard force for them, and I think his leadership meant a lot for a team that seems to be lacking leadership. And I guess that's why I'm doubting Philly. You're right. On paper, the signings are fantastic, but I just go back to a team that I felt like was lacking leadership, lost 2 of their 4 most prominent leaders. I'm fading them again.
I'll say this about Philly. I love Devin White and I love CJ Gardner-Johnson, and I won't be a hypocrite because if the Niners had signed those guys, I'd be doing cartwheels. So I can't sit there and say that I don't like the Eagles getting those guys. But it's a major loss when you lose Big Cox in the middle. I mean, it's a major loss. Anytime you lose Big Cox in the middle, that's a major one. And as Muff D says, they go in Penix. That's Muff. All right, I said it was the last one.
My bad. I ruined your joke there, though.
I know, it's all right.
I said it was the last one, and I lied here. Oh, God. Geez, you just fell right into it. Yeah.
I said it was the last one, but you know what? I decided against
Muff D said no. Cosmos
said no. You can't go out with Vish not getting your Major Cox joke. I mean, come on. I just can't go out that way. That's not the way the Krug show goes out. All right, here we go. We're all big mouth know-it-alls on some level, right? Me more than you guys. But we always give our opinions about what these GMs should do. And we think we know. And that's fine. That's fine. That's kind of the nature of this whole medium, I kind of think, is we're giving you our unfiltered thoughts. So let's finish this live stream, since this is kind of the off-season beginning live stream, with Ryan Poles. How would you play your hand if you were Ryan Poles? He's the Bears general manager. He has Justin Fields. You can debate how good or bad Justin Fields is all day and all night if you want, but he has Justin Fields. He also has the rights to the number 1 pick in the draft and the number 9 pick in the draft. I've heard people suggest that maybe Ryan Poles ought to pass on Caleb Williams and draft the sure thing wide receiver Marvin Harrison Jr. and just give Justin Fields Marvin Harrison Jr. and try to build around Fields a little bit and pass on Caleb and Drake May and Jaden Daniels, the 3 young quarterbacks that are staring him in the face. If I make you guys Ryan Poles and you can do anything you want, what are you doing?
Yeah, for me, this is like the easiest move of all time. Like, see a Justin Fields, buy Justin Fields. Don't even want to bother figuring out Justin Fields' contract situation or even playing that game with, is he worth paying? Is he going to reach his potential? I'm saying goodbye. I'm drafting Caleb Williams. I think Caleb's more talented just as a quarterback and prospect than Fields was, and I think he is a better prospect than Fields was, so I think that's a part of it. And then, so yeah, I'm drafting Caleb and moving on. If I'm also Ryan Poles, I fire Matt Eberflus. You had every asset to go and try to get a super megastar coach in Chicago to really change culture. but I don't know what they're doing with the Matt Eberflus thing. So since I'm Ryan Poles for a day, thank you very much, Larry. See ya, Matt Eberflus. And then finally at 9, because they traded for
So
Keenan
you're
Allen.
taking Caleb?
I'm taking Caleb.
Okay.
I'm firing Eberflus. I'm going and getting a real head coach. A guy that can work with me, Krug. We need our team chemistry, as Jed York has mentioned in the past. Like, we have to work together. We can't be working against each other. And then finally at pick 9, now that you've made the trade for Keenan Allen, DJ Moore is a superstar. I mean, how many guys have 1,500 yards in an offense where Tyson Bagent starts multiple games? Justin Fields averages like 180 passing yards for his career and takes the most terrible sacks of any quarterback in the NFL. And you have a terrible pass offense, and the guy produced 1,500 yards receiving. You have a legit number 1 receiver. I'm not touching Rome Odunze, even though I think Rome Odunze is a stud. I'm going to Dallas Turner. I'm going to Jared Verse. They've signed good players on their defense. Montez Sweat turned their defense around. Pair Jared Verse, pair Dallas Turner with Montez Sweat. You have Caleb Williams. You did what Houston did last year, which is first-round pass rusher to change their defense, first-round quarterback to change their offense. Bang, bang, there you go. The Bears are all of a sudden up and going, but they won't do that because they're a pathetic franchise crew. They never get it right. They never will get it right, and I will continue to make fun of them.
Wow.
I love it. Jeez. That was great. That was absolutely
Jesse,
great.
You are Ryan Poles. Are you taking Caleb Williams? Are you taking Drake May? Are you taking Jaden Daniels? Are you trading down? If you're trading down, who are you trading down for? What are you doing? Are you staying with Fields? Are you moving off of Fields? What are you doing if you're Ryan Poles?
Well, I just said that I haven't done my homework on the quarterbacks. However, there is one quarterback that I have watched, and it is Caleb Williams. And I called Vish immediately, and we talked about it. I don't think he's a can't miss prospect the way that everybody talks about him. That's just me personally. I don't see can't miss prospect. I see a very good player, and he might end up being great, but I don't look at him and say, oh my gosh, this is a generational, you've got to have guy. Now, that being said, I'm going to assume he's the best quarterback in the draft because everybody has said that and tried to sell that. And so I'm going to operate on that assumption since I haven't yet watched the other guys. So based off of my thoughts of Caleb Williams and also my thoughts on Justin Fields, I'm still pulling the trigger and going with Caleb Williams because Justin Fields is, I'm sorry, he's just not good. He's not. I didn't like him coming out of college. I feel like all the problems that he had at Ohio State have just plagued him in the NFL. You talked about he throws for like 180 yards a game. He has one 300-yard passing game in his career. He has 7 games, I believe, where he's thrown less than 50% completion. He's arguably the worst quarterback in crunch time in the fourth quarter since he's come into the league. I can't do it with Justin Fields. So I'm moving on from Justin Fields. You don't get the number 1 pick very often. Luckily for them, they were able to get it twice. They were able to cash in on a trade last year when doing so. And this year you've got it again. At the very least, let's assume that you get Justin Fields 2.0. Well, at least you've got him on a rookie deal for 4 years before you figure it out again. I would rather do that than try to extend Justin Fields or choose a 5th-year option on Justin Fields. So I'm moving on. And then with the number 9 pick, I'm going to draft the best offensive lineman available. And if there's not one that I think is good enough, I'm going to push back a few picks, get one, and then pick up some more draft capital. But I'm absolutely not moving forward with Justin Fields. No way.
So we're on the same page. Are you in on firing Eberflus too? Are we kicking him out too?
Sure. And Gizmo Maltese, I disagree completely. Fields would have Shanahan pulling his hair out. Absolutely not.
Yeah, I was someone who wanted them to draft Justin Fields, and that would have never worked.
All right, here's what I'm doing.
Michael Penix.
I'm passing on Caleb Williams. Okay. I don't want to take Caleb Williams. There's something that makes me very nervous about Caleb Williams. I'm passing on Drake May. I don't want to take a chance with Drake May. I'm passing on Jaden Daniels. I don't want to take Jaden Daniels.
Here we go.
I'm trading this pick to the New York Football Giants, and I'm allowing the NFL to have their dream, which is Caleb Williams playing for the New York Giants. And to me, that's their TV dream. So I'll move from 1 to 6, and for that, I want from the Giants, obviously the 6th pick. You want a bonanza of picks. but I want the 6th pick, and then I want Dexter Lawrence, and I want that 6th pick, Dexter Lawrence, and either Kayvon Thibodeau or Azeez Ojulari. I want a pass rusher. I want Dexter Lawrence. I want the 6th pick overall. And at the 6th pick overall, I'll take whoever's there between Brock Bowers, Joe Alt, or if I really am nervous about Fields, maybe I would take JJ McCarthy. But Brock Bowers to me is a lock as a great player. Joe Alt is a lock as a great tackle. Lawrence is you're bolstering your D line with multiple sure things. You're bolstering either your O line or your tight end with Bowers or Alt, a blue chipper. You're not getting into the quarterback business of trying to handicap the thing because you're not good at doing that, and it's really difficult to do. And why do that? You're a young personnel guy. Take the sure thing. I would pray that Marvin Harrison fell to 4, but even if he doesn't, I'll take Harrison or Bowers or Joe Alt, all right there, or even Malik Neighbors. I'm okay with that. I would take that. I'd move down, but I would try to get future picks, but I want Dexter Lawrence for sure and one of those outside pass rushers. I'm not handicapping this thing with Caleb because no. I just, there's too many unknowns. Look at the bust rate of draft choices in quarterbacks taken in the first round. It's horrible, absolutely horrible. There's no way if I'm Ryan Poles, I'm taking that kind of gamble.
Yeah, but look at the success rate of GMs that don't have a franchise quarterback. They don't last very long either. So it's damn if you do, damn if you don't. If you take one, you're taking the chance of having the bust, but you're also taking basically your one shot at having a long-term job in the league. Like without the quarterback, you're basically screwed in terms of job security unless your last name is Shanahan and your first name is Kyle.
Yeah, but there's other quarterbacks in this draft. I told you I like Penix quite a bit. They have another whole nother pick at 9 that they could trade down the board 3-4 times, probably still wind up with Penix in the teens. I mean, it's not like, they have no chance at a quarterback. I'd much rather do that and turn this into a bonanza of 7, 8, 9 guys. I mean, look at what who was it that turned their pick into like 7 guys?
That was
recently.
New England with Jimmy G pick.
No, not that. There was somebody else who also traded and wound up with a bunch of guys. Houston.
Oh.
Houston got rid of Deshaun Watson. They got like 7 or 8 players. Houston's one of the deepest, youngest teams in all of football. They're coming, man. If I'm the Bears, if I'm Ryan Poles, I'm doing that.
Why is Houston coming though? Why is Houston coming? Right?
Well, because they have a quarterback.
What did they draft that's making them coming? They were treading water in open.
Pause,
they were treading water in open, like in an open pool, like signing veteran player after veteran player to one year contract, firing coach after year, and all of a sudden
they turn that into Vish. They turn that into a ton. I mean, absolute ton.
Of that into, but all of the value for what they turned it into is value because of who.
Yeah, but right? I mean, look what they got. They got Tank Dell, Nico Collins.
But Nico Collins was nothing before CJ Stroud.
Right.
Will Anderson, Christian Harris. I mean, they got all those guys in that trade.
Sure.
Derek Stingley Jr. They made an incredible trade and set themselves up. All I'm saying is there's a lot of personnel evaluation. Don't put it all into Caleb Williams. If I were Chicago, that would be my advice. Don't put it all into Caleb. And I don't believe in North Carolina is a terrible school for busts. There's all kinds of busts. LSU's a really hard school to evaluate because you're evaluating Jaden Daniels with 2 of the greatest college receivers we've ever seen on one team in the last 25 years. So is he Joe Burrow or is he Jamarcus?
CJ Stroud had some pretty good receivers and he's pretty good. But and also speaking of good receivers, your guy Penix, great offensive line and good receivers.
Great receivers.
Yeah,
3
I
of them.
mean, I'm just saying, I would go with numbers. I would go with numbers because to me, if you said, go back and you tell me, back away from this top 10, tell me who's really great long term. If I had to bet everything I had on it, I would not bet those quarterbacks. I'd bet Marvin Harrison, Brock Bowers, Joe Alt, Dallas Turner, Malik Neighbors. That's who I'm betting in the top 10.
But
You
drafting
can have you can have Drake May, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, JJ McCarthy, and maybe even Fashanu from Penn State. I'll take those other guys. I think there's some very difficult evaluations in this top
My
15.
argument isn't about the odds though of success. Like I'm 100% with you on that. I get it. Quarterback is a gamble. Harrison Jr. for sure safer prospect, right? Joe Alt for sure safer prospect. Dallas Turner for sure safer prospect. I'm with you on all of that. The problem is I feel like when you say it, you're like, don't take the risk because you're basically not taking the chance and you're giving yourself a better chance of building a team and preserving your roster. My point is, even if you take Marvin Harrison and he turns out to be an all-pro, you still possibly can get fired in 2 years, right? Like Matt Millen took Calvin Johnson, right? Or was it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he took Calvin
Yeah, it was
Johnson. He
Millen.
got fired in 1 year, 2 years, right? So
Yeah.
that's where you need to pick the quarterback. And that's where with your Houston example, like you can pick Christian Harris, Derek Stingley, and Will Anderson and still get fired. That's what happened in Jacksonville, right? They fired was it Dave Caldwell who picked Jalen Ramsey, AJ Bouye, and Yannick Ngakoue and all of them? So, that's what happens unless you get the quarterback right. So, yes, you have to take a gamble on the quarterback, but you really have no shot of lasting in the league no matter how many players you hit unless you nail the quarterback. And that's Houston's situation right now because for all the things they did right, all of those things only look super right because we think CJ Stroud could possibly be a superstar quarterback. And we'll find out if he will be.
I'm just telling you that I think this is a very difficult quarterback draft class to handicap. I mean, it really is. They're all very difficult.
I just said that I don't think Caleb's is a can't miss prospect. I'm not near as high on him as everybody else. That being said, if he's the option, let's assume he's the best guy because, again, I haven't watched the other ones yet, so I'm not going to put myself out there and say he's not. He still may be, in my opinion, but he's not a can't miss prospect. But what I do know is Justin Fields is not the guy, and I can't move forward with a guy that I know is not the guy. I have to take a shot being at number one when you're that high. You don't get that high very often. Again, last year they got lucky. They turned it into a ton. They didn't know enough about Fields. Now you've got another year of data. You're positive he's not the guy. Basically, he was out there for anybody to have him. Nobody wants Justin Fields to start for them, apparently. It's not just the Bears. So the league is telling you they don't believe in him either as the guy. So if you know you have a guy that's not the guy, you cannot spin your wheels anymore. You have to take somebody at number one and hope that you're right. I mean, that's your only chance at saving your job.
And I think, Krug, your point also, I would maybe have I would agree with it a little more if this was Poles' first go run at it. But he's already made his big trade, and he robbed the bank with that trade. He pulled off one of the greatest trades in NFL history, regardless of how Bryce Young turns out, because it was the number one overall pick for the number one overall pick and a 1,500-yard receiver plus another number one overall pick. So he's already pulled it off. I feel like you can't be at number one and pass on the quarterback twice. You got your chance to pass on it. Now you got to take your plunge and give your franchise to a guy, and you got to hope you get it right. You got to hope you evaluate it right. You got to hope you find the right guy, and you got to hope that you surround him the right way too. But I feel like I know what you're saying, Krug, because I get it, but I feel like Poles is just in a situation where he's got to take that plunge.
I mean, it's really scary, man. I spent a half hour looking at all three guys at the top of the draft last week, and I came away thinking I kind of like Daniels the best. You know what I mean? I mean, May is big and strong and fast, but I don't know, man. North Carolina, they make me nervous. And then some of the biggest busts I can remember are North Carolina guys. And then Caleb, there's something wrong there. I don't know what it is. There's something that makes me not think he's the greatest. And I just think Daniels just looks to me to be the most he seems like he can throw with touch and timing, and he's a very advanced thrower. I mean, he's really, really good. And then I look at Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors and go, you know what? Those guys are freaking awesome. So I don't know. I'm not. It makes me really nervous. I'm glad that I'm not Ryan Poles making that call because that is a tough call. All right, two last supers. Jeff says draft 2024 defensive tackle rankings 1 through 8. Rook or Fisk, Larry? I like Rook, but I like Fisk too. I like Fisk a lot, but I like Rook. I think Rook's more special. And Wolf Life Wild, whatever will they do without big old Cox? I'm childish. There you go.
Sorry, I won't ruin the joke for you, Wolf. Wolf Life
That's
Wild, like I did for Larry.
You know, and that kind of lowbrow stuff really has no place on this show. I mean, thank you for that. And of course, it has a great place on this show. All right, guys, good stuff. What do you got cooking on your channels the rest of the week? I know, Vish, you don't stream often, and when you do, you make it count. But when are you streaming again?
Probably Monday with Rob and then Tuesday with you. We can finally get Tuesday, I think, back on next week. I've been a little busy at work the last couple of Tuesdays, so we haven't been able to make it happen. So that's what I would say is coming up. St. Patrick's Day is coming up. St. Patrick's Day in Chicago is always a really fun holiday because they dye the river green. And you basically spent the full day, drinking Guinness and having a good time. So that's going to be there on Saturday. That has nothing to do with streaming or football, but don't worry, on Sunday, I'll catch up. I got a lot of draft to watch, so I'm really excited. I've been watching it. This isn't actually one of my favorite. Any time with football is my favorite time of the year, but I love draft time too. And I love digging into these prospects. I love reading what everyone has to say. I love hearing what everyone has to say. I love all the differing opinions. It's actually, I don't know if I would love hearing what everyone has to say. Some people can irk me with what they have to say, but you know what? That's life.
There you go. Say hi to Rob. He's a great little guy. Jesse, what do you think? When are you streaming next?
I'll for sure be streaming Monday. I'll probably put out some pre-recorded videos over the weekend. There's some things on my mind that I want to put out, and obviously free agency is still going. There's still guys out there. There's still some moves to be made. Trades are happening still, so looking forward to that. And we'll have a good fun weekend. But Monday we'll be back to full-time schedule streaming again.
You can catch me in the morning. I'll be on at 8:30. I'll be on at 10:45. I'll be on probably in the afternoon as well. Just tune into YouTube. Look for the Krug Show. I'll be on.
Hardest working guy on YouTube.
Yeah, exactly.
I did a 5-hour stream the other day. That was insane, Larry.
When
That's a marathon.
I did a 5 hour?
5 hour. Yes.
With
you
who?
did a 5-hour stream with Damon. You guys did a 5-hour stream the other day, didn't you?
Oh my God. Yeah, that was fun.
That was insane.
Yeah, that's tough. It's rough.
That was a long time.
He didn't even realize it. He's like, oh,
well, and
okay,
what's crazy is like it was smart, right? It was smart because you're doing it during free agency. You were doing it, but nothing hit early on. So it was like 3 hours of that was like nothing was going on, and you guys had to somehow find the time. And then when things started happening, it was like, well, I got to go and get my kids. So see you later.
I'll leave us with this. I'm not dry snitching on anybody, but I think I know why Krug didn't realize it went 5 hours.
Because it wasn't on my channel.
Oh, it wasn't on your channel?
No, well, I don't think it was. Because I think I had a conference call in the morning, so I think I popped in on his channel. No, maybe not. Maybe it wasn't.
I think it was live on both yours. Yeah.
Tell me why. Why? Can you say it on the air?
No, I cannot. It's been discussed earlier.
It's too inflammatory.
It's no. It's
not.
No, it's the running joke. It's the running joke of the show. What's the joke of the show? What's the theme of the show?
Or who was it? Steve? Was it Steve that demanded that you do that thing, Larry? Who was it?
That I do?
Sean Wilford demanded, Larry, that you need to do something.
That I get high?
Exactly.
I was not high. I was not high. I was not high.
I deserve that. I deserve that for ruining your joke with Fletcher Cox. I deserve that.
There was one show that we did in Vegas, and I don't know, and it might have been with you, Vish. I forget, but I was just blitzed.
It was
I
the
mean,
three of us on a Thursday, Larry.
It was
you told us that a 45-inch TV was the greatest invention that you've ever seen, and that you wanted to sit and watch the Super Bowl with some food and just watch the game there.
It wasn't a 45-incher. It had to be like 125. It was a monster. It was an entire wall. It was awesome.
It wasn't. It definitely wasn't. It definitely wasn't.
Goddamn awesome. Don't you bring me down. All right, we have one more super here from Derek, who's going to save the proceedings. Jesse's like, can I just get out of here?
No,
Derek's
dude,
like,
I just remember the TV. That was so good.
It was a great TV. It was an amazing TV. But I mean, I was all kinds of twisted. I mean, seriously, I'm I could have been drinking, smoking, popping thing. I mean, it was a disaster. I mean, I was in Vegas. I was a freaking
Crew.
monster.
What happens in Vegas? You know the rules.
Stays in Vegas. Come on, man.
Well, nobody's watching this. There's only like 2,000 people here. Derek said, question on Eric since Jacksonville signed Armstead for $17 million. Does that mean he makes $17 million there and 18 from the Niners?
He doesn't make anything else from the Niners.
Yeah.
He doesn't make anything on the Niners?
No. So here's the way it works.
All that is like it's more like bookkeeping on the Niner front.
Exactly. So then the 49ers, when you pay the bonus up front, like your signing bonus, what have you, so that you don't take a massive cap hit, even though you're giving the money to the player up front, you're spreading the cap hit over the length of the contract. So what the 49ers owe Eric Armstead, they've actually physically paid Eric Armstead, but the bookkeeping is they still have to pay it towards their salary cap. That's why there's a cap hit for Eric Armstead. But the physical money they would have owed him for this year, the near $18 million, that is off the books. And Jacksonville now signed him for almost the same amount of money. So they're going to pay him that.
Couldn't get a better explanation than that. That was right on.
Seriously, that was very, very well detailed.
Yeah.
And that was 2 hours and 40 minutes and 26 seconds into the big show, which is my favorite show of the week.
Yeah, be clear about that. No,
so if Cosmos tracking only 34 minutes after Krug announced the last topic of the show.
Tomorrow, how many minutes?
34.
Yeah. Let's wrap this up with a little ditty that I am going to play for you on my guitar. All right. What if we started playing music at the end of the show? Just bang, 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 bada, bang, bang, bang. All right.
That's what it would sound like. I'd have a cowbell. Like, it would just be a disaster.
Ding, 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 ding.
Triangle.
All right. That does it for us. Go watch Vish. Go watch Jesse. Come back and watch me. And, of course, catch us next Thursday night on Jesse's channel, the week after on Vish's channel. The Big Show!
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get exactly what you asked for.